Chapter 3943. In fact, Duan Lingtian did not have a good impression of Lan Xilin, even if Lan Xilin was acting very cordially. However, he knew very well that this was all because he came with Jin Pingfan. If he was alone, he would not have received such treatment. Lan Xilin might not even let Yi Beiyuan's disciples Wu Zhongtang go for his sake. Even if Qin Wuyang came with him alone, Lan Xilin might not let Zhu Zhongtang go so easily, let alone if he was alone. Because Zhen Pingfan came personally, he was very cooperative and cooperated unconditionally. Because he knew that he had no choice but to cooperate. Thank you for sure. Although he did not like Lan Xilin, Duan Lingtian did not refuse Lan Xilin's cordiality and his request to exchange soul orbs. No matter what, he had to give Zhen Pingfan and Qin Wuyang face. Moreover, he was new here, and it was not suitable to offend someone with a strong background like Lan Xilin at this time. You're all young people. You can interact more in the future. Seeing that Duan Lingtian and Lan Xilin had exchanged soul orbs, Zhen Pingfan said to Lan Xilin with a smile. Lan Xilin naturally replied, "Yes, for sure. Let's go." Zhen Pingfan said to Duan Lingtian and Qin Wuyang. At the same time, he said goodbye to Lan Xilin. "Young Lan Xilin, we'll be leaving first. Farewell, elder ancestor. Farewell, junior uncle Qin. Brother Lingtian, see you later." Lan Xilin smiled and said goodbye to Duan Lingtian and the other two. However, when he looked at Duan Lingtian in the end, his gaze turned a little cold when he finished speaking. In the next moment, he turned around and returned to his residence. As for Lu Hui, he naturally followed after him at the first moment. As for Hu Er, he had already left. Bang! After returning to the courtyard of his residence, Lan Xilin raised his hand and smashed a pavilion in the courtyard, turning it into dust. Lu Hui stood behind him and watched everything silently. "You've just arrived at Chunyang School, and you dare to interfere with Lan Xilin's business. Damn it." At this moment, Lan Xilin no longer had his previous gentleness. All that was left was endless rage. His originally handsome face had also become somewhat ferocious and twisted in an instant. "When have I, Lan Xilin, ever suffered such a huge loss since I was born? What's more, it's a silent loss." Lan Xilin's heart was twisted as well. After leaving the floating island where Lan Xilin and the others were, Duan Lingtian followed Zhen Pingfan and Qin Wuyang, and passed by many floating islands. In the end, they appeared outside a floating island that was slightly larger than the one Lan Xilin was on. Along the way, they also met some students from Chunyang School. They all greeted Qin Wuyang respectfully. The few who could recognize Elder Jingxi's identity token also bowed respectfully to Zhen Pingfan, and called him Elder Jingxiu. However, they did not seem to know which Elder Jingxiu this was. For a moment, Duan Lingtian also realized that not everyone in Chunyang School could recognize Zhen Pingfan. Grand-granduncle is a mysterious figure in our Chunyang School. He usually only moves around our floating island and rarely goes out. As if he saw Duan Lingtian's doubts, Qin Wuyang explained to him in a timely manner. Hearing this, Duan Lingtian also came to a sudden realization. "Greetings, grand-granduncle, senior brother Qin." When Duan Lingtian and the others entered the floating island in front of them, a middle-aged man flashed in the void. However, he was different from the people they had met before. He obviously recognized Zhen Pingfan, and bowed to Zhen Pingfan and Qin Wuyang repeatedly. "Duan Lingtian, this is a disciple of a senior brother of mine. His name is Zhao Lu." Zhen Pingfan saw the middle-aged man in front of him and did not greet him. He directly introduced him to Duan Lingtian. Although he is little Yang Yang's junior brother, and is also an elder Jingxiu, his strength is still stronger than little Yang Yang's. In the future, if you have any problems, you can also look for him. You can exchange soul beads with each other, Zhen Pingfan said. Hearing Zhen Pingfan's words, Duan Lingtian quickly took out his soul bead. After being stunned for a moment, Zhao Lu also immediately took out his soul bead. "So you are Duan Lingtian." After exchanging soul beads, Zhao Lu smiled brightly. "Hello, I am Zhao Lu, an elder Jingxiu like senior brother Qin. I should be able to become a Jade Void Elder in 100 years. The Jade Void Elders of the Chunyang School were all top-level high-level divine emperors. Their strength was comparable to the Golden Dragon Elder of the Tianlong clan. As for Elder Jingxiu, he was slightly weaker, only comparable to the Black Dragon Elder of the Tianlong clan. Elder Zhao Lu. Duan Lingtian repeatedly greeted Zhao Lu with a smile on his face. He knew that since Zhen Pingfan had asked him to exchange soul beads with Zhao Lu, Zhen Pingfan valued Zhao Lu. At least in Zhen Pingfan's eyes, Zhao Lu was a more reliable person compared to him. Duan Lingtian, I haven't been out for a long time. Now that I'm back, I'm going to say hello to my father. After greeting Duan Lingtian, Zhen Pingfan looked at Duan Lingtian and said, Next, these two boys will arrange your accommodation. I'll talk to you later when I'm free. Although the journey from Tianfeng City to Chunyang School was spent on the Divine Artifact spaceship, the journey from the Tianlong clan to Linghu City and from Linghu City to Tianfeng City was different. During those two journeys, Duan Lingtian and Zhen Pingfan chatted happily. Duan Lingtian even told Zhen Pingfan a lot of interesting things about Earth in his previous life, as well as all kinds of new things that Zhen Pingfan did not know about. This made Zhen Pingfan very curious about Earth. At one point, he made an agreement with Duan Lingtian that after 300 years, when the space channel between the lower dimensions and the planes of gods opened, Duan Lingtian would take him to Earth for a tour. Duan Lingtian, as an adult who came from Earth, did not have much of a sense of hierarchy. Along the way, he seemed to have forgotten that Zhen Pingfan was an emperor god expert, a lofty existence in Chunyang School. He chatted with him like a friend. Under such circumstances, the relationship between the two of them became closer. At the very least, Zhen Pingfan no longer valued him as an outstanding junior disciple. Okay. Duan Lingtian responded casually. When Qin Wuyang saw Duan Lingtian and Zhen Pingfan talking so casually, he was used to it. However, Zhao Lu was stunned. Don't be surprised. Qin Wuyang saw Zhao Lu's surprise and explained with a smile. Martial Granduncle and Duan Lingtian hit it off at first sight. They're no different from friends. In the future, unless Duan Lingtian becomes a disciple of someone, it'll be difficult to give him any seniority. Qin Wuyang's smile turned into a bitter one when he said this. A brat who was not even 3,000 years old was friends with his martial granduncle, and his martial granduncle treated him as an equal. If Duan Lingtian did not become a disciple of someone, how would he be regarded as a disciple in the future? After listening to Qin Wuyang's explanation, Zhao Lu nodded woodenly. After a while, he came back to his senses and led Duan Lingtian inside with Qin Wuyang. Elder Qin, didn't you say that you've already arranged a place for me to stay? Duan Lingtian was stunned when he saw Qin Wuyang and Zhao Lu pointing at some of the buildings on the floating island, and asking him which one he liked. This was because Qin Wuyang had said in front of Lan Shilin that he'd already arranged a place for him to stay. That was just to appease that brat Lan Shilin. Qin Wuyang smiled. That brat wants you to stay with him. Even if he's not trying to make things difficult for you, he's definitely trying to rope you into his faction. Martial Granduncle and I invited you here. If you go to his faction, we'll be at a great disadvantage. Duan Lingtian, although you have the right to make your own choice, and Junior Granduncle and I can't force you to stay, I still want to tell you that it's better for you to stay in our progeny than the other progenies. Perhaps the other factions have resources and environments that aren't inferior to ours, but which Jingxiu Elder in their faction can treat you as an equal like our martial granduncle. Qin Wuyang brought up Zhen Pingfan in order to rope in Duan Lingtian, and make Duan Lingtian stay with their faction. They were the ones who'd invited Duan Lingtian back. However, if people from the other factions knew that Duan Lingtian had come to Chunyang School, they would most likely try to rope him in. At that time, even if Duan Lingtian chose to go to the other factions, they could only suffer in silence. There was nothing they could do. With a genius like Duan Lingtian and the upcoming 7 Prefectures banquet, as long as he didn't want to, their faction really couldn't force Duan Lingtian to stay. Duan Lingtian saw Qin Wuyang's concern and shook his head with a smile. Elder Qin, you don't have to say so much. I came back with you and Elder Zhen. In this Chunyang School, I'm the closest to you. If I don't stay with your faction, which faction will I stay with? Moreover, I'll remember all the good you and Elder Zhen have done for me, Duan Lingtian said. When he heard Duan Lingtian's words, a bright smile appeared on Qin Wuyang's face. I knew you're not a heartless person. Although Duan Lingtian felt that Qin Wuyang's words were a little strange, he didn't correct him. Under the guidance of Qin Wuyang and Zhao Lu, he continued to choose his residence. Zhao Lu was actually a little worried before, because he had just confirmed with Qin Wuyang that Duan Lingtian had killed 2 mid-level divine emperors in succession, when he was a lower-level divine emperor in the Tianlong clan. And it was even more dangerous than the rumors said. At that time, he knew that Duan Lingtian's value was enough to attract the attention of all factions in Chunyang school. He was also wondering if Duan Lingtian would be lured away by one of the factions. Some factions in Chunyang school were unscrupulous. They would do anything to achieve their goals. Now, after hearing Duan Lingtian's attitude in front of Qin Wuyang, he immediately felt relieved. At the same time, he also found Duan Lingtian more pleasing to the eye. Let's go there. After about 10 breaths, Duan Lingtian's eyes fixed on a place. Chapter 3944. The mansion that Duan Lingtian had his eyes on was a mansion that was situated beside a mountain. It was not big, but it was not small either. The front and back of the mansion were arranged in picturesque disorder. When one looked down, it was like a painting. When Qin Wuyang saw that Duan Lingtian had his eyes on the mansion in front of him, he said with a smile, Duan Lingtian, you really have good taste. This mansion was built not long ago. It's one of the mansions that we're going to use for the new disciples. It's also the one with the best environment. I didn't expect you to choose it at first glance. Qin Wuyang praised. As the saying goes, first come, first served. Duan Lingtian arrived first and chose this mansion. This shows that he has a connection with this mansion. Zhao Lu chimed in from the side. Just like that, Duan Lingtian settled down at the Chunyang school. Duan Lingtian, feel free to look for me if you need anything. Zhao Lu said to Duan Lingtian. As for your entry procedures, I'll take you to them tomorrow. Senior brother Qin, you must be tired from the journey. Take a rest. There's no need for you to personally take Duan Lingtian to the entry procedures. After speaking to Duan Lingtian, Zhao Lu turned to Qin Wuyang and said. Qin Wuyang laughed when he heard this. Junior brother Zhao, you really care about me. Duan Lingtian, you'll go with junior brother Zhao tomorrow to complete the entry procedures. Also, if there's anything else, you can contact me and junior brother Zhao. If we can't handle it, you can look for Martial Granduncle. In the Tianlong clan, there's basically nothing that Martial Granduncle can't handle. At this point, Qin Wuyang seemed to have thought of something, and the smile on his face faded a little. Of course, you should also understand that if it's not a matter of bullying, it's not convenient for Martial Granduncle to intervene if it's just a competition between peers. Of course, if it's a competition between peers, you Duan Lingtian won't be afraid of anyone. Qin Wuyang chuckled as he spoke. Other people, even those who had seen Duan Lingtian kill the 2 mid-level god emperors in the floating image pearl, might think that there was a reason why Duan Lingtian could kill them so easily. Perhaps, the 2 of them were already heavily injured? Duan Lingtian was just taking advantage of the situation. He had thought of this before, but after he went to the Tianlong clan and inquired a few times, he got a very definite answer. Duan Lingtian had killed 2 middle-level divine emperors at their peak. Moreover, neither of the 2 middle-level god emperors was weaker than the inner sect elders of the Tianlong clan. Elder Qin, don't worry. I know what to do even if you don't remind me, Duan Lingtian said with a smile. Disciples of the same sect compete with peers. No matter who loses, it's because he's not as skilled as the other. Naturally, it's not good to rely on one's background to get others to interfere. That's the principle. Seeing that Duan Lingtian was so sensible and tactful, Qin Wuyang's smile became even brighter. Of course, with Martial Granduncle here, you don't have to worry about the other party's elders making things difficult for you. If the other party's elders dare to make things difficult for you, then he'll be out of luck. A cold grin flickered across Qin Wuyang's lips as he finished his sentence. Duan Lingtian nodded. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. He had never imagined that he would have such a powerful backer like Zhen Pingfan when he had just entered the Chunyang school. one of the top sects in Tunglung province. Based on what he knew about Zheng Pingfan was not only a second-generation powerhouse in the Chunyang school, but also a powerhouse himself. Moreover, the Chunyang school's sect leader was his junior brother. After a while, Qin Wuyang and Zhao Lu said their goodbyes and left. Duan Lingtian also entered his own mansion and went into the inner room. Of course, before Zhao Lu left, he also told Duan Lingtian how to activate the formation in the mansion. This would also tell others that this mansion had an owner. At the same time, the name Duan Lingtian was engraved on a blank stone tablet in front of the mansion's gate. Duan Lingtian had listened to Zhao Lu and written it himself. In the mansion there was a front yard, a backyard and a pond in the backyard. There were many flowers and plants planted in the backyard. Duan Lingtian could recognize some of them as medicinal herbs. As for the front yard, it was basically paved with bluestone bricks. There was a small hill, and not far from the hill, there was a pavilion. Inside the pavilion, there was a large stone table and 6 stone benches. The environment is really good. Duan Lingtian smiled faintly before he entered the largest room in the mansion. It was also the master's room. It could be said that the mansion he was currently living in was the best place he had lived in since he arrived in the mystic stellar land in the realms of gods. Oh right. I should remind Elder Qin about the divine void-piercing shuttle. With this thought in mind, Duan Lingtian sent a message to Qin Wuyang to inform him about the divine void-piercing shuttle. Qin Wuyang immediately replied that he would immediately send a message to the divine weapon master he was familiar with. Actually, there's no need to rush. Elder Qin, you've just returned. You can rest for a while before you look for the divine void-piercing shuttle. Duan Lingtian quickly added, feeling slightly embarrassed by Qin Wuyang's cooperation. However, even so, Qin Wuyang still replied to him in less than 15 minutes. Duan Lingtian, I've already spoken to him. However, he's not in the sect right now. He'll only be back after some time. Also, he doesn't have the materials needed to refine the divine void-piercing shuttle. Since he's not back yet, I'll help you look for them. Qin Wuyang said. Thank you, Elder Qin. Duan Lingtian thanked Qin Wuyang profusely. Elder Qin, I'll give you divine crystals when the time comes. There's no need for that. Qin Wuyang said nonchalantly. The materials needed to refine the divine void-piercing shuttle aren't that valuable. Qin Wuyang can still afford to give you these things. Just treat it as my gift for sending you into the Pure Sun sect and into our faction. Duan Lingtian wanted to insist, but Qin Wuyang was even more insistent. In the end, he could only agree helplessly. However, in his heart, he thought that he would refine some divine pills that would be useful to Qin Wuyang in return. After ending his communication with Qin Wuyang, Duan Lingtian began to think about his current situation. I'm in Chunyang school now, not in the Tianlong clan. There are more experts here. Moreover, the branch that I am in now is a branch that has an expert of the Middle God Emperor realm. I'm afraid I won't be able to hide from him if I refine the ultimate Emperor grade divine pill here. It seems like I can only refine the ultimate King grade divine pill in Chunyang school. If I want to refine the ultimate Emperor grade divine pill, I'll have to refine it after I leave. Fortunately, I'm new here, and I don't have any enemies in Chunyang school. I don't have to be as careful as when I was in the Tianlong clan. As he muttered to himself, Duan Lingtian suddenly thought of someone. That's right. Yang Qinya, the son of the sect leader of the Thousand Demons sect, is also in Chunyang school? A large number of the higher-ups of the Thousand Demons sect were killed by the Tianlong clan, because I was attacked by the men of sacrifice. I wonder if his father, the sect leader of the Thousand Demons sect, was among them. Thinking of this, Duan Lingtian sent a message to the Tianlong clan's sect leader, Long Qingchong, who was in the Tianlong clan, to inquire about the situation. The response he received was that the sect leader of the Thousand Demons sect was still alive. Previously, the sect leader of the Thousand Demons sect was not among the higher-ups who were killed by Xuemingji, the deputy sect leader of the Tianlong clan. Since that's the case, I don't have any deep hatred for him. He might target me. However, he shouldn't want to take my life. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Moreover, even if he wants to take my life, he needs to have the ability to do so. unless he relies on his backer in Chunyang School to kill me. Thinking of this, Duan Lingtian stopped thinking about it. He closed his eyes and began to cultivate, waiting for the arrival of tomorrow. At that time, Elder Lingxiu Xiaolu would take him to complete the procedures for entering the Chunyang School. Just as Duan Lingtian settled down and began to cultivate, Yang Qianya, the young sect leader of the Thousand Demons sect, who was also in Chunyang School, received the news. Duan Lingtian has already come to Chunyang School, and he has entered Elder Qin Wuyang's Yin Peak. Yang Qianya sat cross-legged on the bed, his expression gloomy and unsightly. He also knew about the recent changes in the Thousand Demons sect. Shuemingji, the deputy sect leader of the Tianlong clan, went to the Thousand Demons sect and said that he wanted to investigate the matter of the Shenhuang death squad entering the Tianlong clan to kill Duan Lingtian. In the end, he found a group of high-ranking officials led by the supreme elder of the Thousand Demons sect, Du Zhan, and killed them all. In addition, his childhood friend Du Pejuan, who was in the Tianlong clan, and Du Qianjun, whom he regarded as his younger brother, were also executed one by one after the death of the Tianlong clan's inner sect elder, Kuang Tianzheng. This was because they were the grandchildren of Kuang Tianzheng's junior brother, Du Zhan, who had the same master as Kuang Tianzheng. They belonged to Kuang Tianzheng's branch. Of course, he didn't know about the latter matter before. Some time ago, his father, Lan Qing, the sect leader of the Thousand Demons sect, told him about it. The reason why he didn't tell him before was that having sex would affect his cultivation. After that, he had to tell him, because that matter was related to the death of the Thousand Demons sect's supreme elder. It couldn't be concealed for long. Even if he didn't tell Yang Qianya now, Yang Qianya would soon find out about it through other channels. How could this Duan Lingtian enter the God Emperor realm in such a short time and catch up with my cultivation? Most importantly, 2 middle-level God Emperor men of sacrifice tried to assassinate him in the Tianlong clan, but were killed by him instead? As the young sect leader of the Thousand Demons sect, he knew more about the assassination of Duan Lingtian than many people of the Tianlong clan. Unlike most people of the Tianlong clan, he didn't think that the 2 men of sacrifice were injured. At that time, among the people who witnessed it, there was an elder of the Thousand Demons sect. That elder could be considered as his martial granduncle. They had communicated with each other, so he could confirm that the 2 middle-level God Emperor men of sacrifice were at their peak strength. Neither of them was weaker than the martial granduncle who had communicated with him about this matter. His martial granduncle was one of the strongest inner sect elders of the Tianlong clan. At least, he wasn't at the bottom. Chapter 3945. Duan Lingtian cultivated for an entire night, and deeply sensed his current cultivation base. Not long after, he heard Zhao Lu's voice from outside. Duan Lingtian, I'll bring you to complete the procedures to enter the school. Duan Lingtian, who was mentally prepared, immediately left the mansion when he heard Zhao Lu's voice. He stepped into the air and arrived beside Zhao Lu, who had been waiting for him for a long time. Elder Zhao Lu. Let's go. Zhao Lu smiled amiably. Duan Lingtian nodded. Then he followed Zhao Lu and left the floating island. During the journey, Zhao Lu also introduced the island to him. This floating island is said to be the cultivation place of our Cloud Peak. It's also called Cloud Peak Island. The name Cloud Peak has no other meaning. It's just the name of our old ancestor. Our old ancestor is called Zhen Yinfeng. He's also the father of Elder Zhen, who brought you back from the Tianlong clan. He's said to be one of the few Void Pierce stage elders in our Chunyang school. You should also know that the Void Pierce stage elders in our Chunyang school are all experts who have stepped into the Mid-God Emperor realm. Duan Lingtian nodded after hearing Zhao Lu's words. After leaving Cloud Peak Island, Zhao Lu continued. In our Chunyang school there are many branches. Anyone who has reached the profound void stage or above can establish a branch of their own. For example, Martial Granduncle can actually leave Cloud Peak and establish his own branch. However, he's not interested in doing so. Besides, even if he establishes his own branch, I'm afraid there won't be many people because the people of the same branch as him are all in Cloud Peak. Duan Lingtian nodded after hearing Zhao Lu's words. They were all family. Even if they split from the family, as the son, he might not be able to bring many people with him. That was because the people of Yin Feng's bloodline would definitely respect Zhen Pingfan's father more than him. Elder Zhao Lu, if Elder Zhen establishes his own progeny, won't the progeny he establishes be called the ordinary progeny? And the floating island where his mundane lineage resides will be called Mundane Island? Suddenly, Duan Lingtian thought of this and immediately asked Zhao Lu about it. Zhao Lu had a strange expression on his face when he heard his words. Then he shook his head and smiled. In fact, the name that the ancestor gave to martial granduncle was often criticized by the other ancestors. They said that a genius like martial granduncle is not worthy of the word ordinary. However, under normal circumstances, if martial granduncle were to establish his own lineage, he would indeed use the name of the ordinary lineage, and the floating island he occupies would also be called Ordinary Island. Zhao Lu smiled. Normally speaking, in a situation like Elder Zhen's, there shouldn't be many independent sects, right? Duan Lingtian asked with a smile. Of course. Zhao Lu nodded. After all, he's not the strongest person in his progeny. Although he's qualified to establish his own progeny, it's meaningless for him to establish his own progeny. Is he going to establish his own progeny to compete with his father's progeny? Unless he's not the ancestor's son but a nephew or something. If that's the case, he can take his progeny away and establish his own progeny. Duan Lingtian could understand Zhao Lu's words. It was indeed the case. Then, what if one day, Elder Zhen becomes even stronger than his father? What will you say? Duan Lingtian asked. In terms of growth, the master of a progeny was usually the strongest person in that progeny. However, what if a stronger person appeared? Moreover, what if the stronger person was his son? Zhao Lu was stunned when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. Then he smiled and said, under such circumstances, martial granduncle would either establish his own progeny, or the ancestor would transfer the progeny to him and rename it the mundane progeny. Of course, the ancestor must be willing to do so. Otherwise, if he wants to become the master of a progeny, he'll have to establish his own progeny. However, that won't happen. Putting aside martial granduncle's personality, he's not interested in leading a progeny. Even if he was, would he take the initiative to compete with his father? It's meaningless. Zhao Lu paused for a moment before he recalled something and sighed. Moreover, the ancestor's 1,000-year heavenly tribulation a few hundred years ago was already difficult for him. I wonder how many more heavenly tribulations he can withstand. All celestial kings and above had to face the 1,000-year heavenly tribulation. No one could avoid it. In the various realms of gods, the 1,000-year heavenly tribulation was also known as the life-seeking heavenly tribulation. The longer one lived, the stronger the heavenly tribulation. If one's strength could not keep up, one would eventually perish under the heavenly tribulation. For example, in the Tianlong clan where Duan Lingtian was from, many higher divine emperors had perished under the heavenly tribulation because they failed to break through and become god emperors. If they could break through and become god emperors, even if they might not be able to live forever, they would at least be able to live longer. For this reason, Duan Lingtian did not feel anything when he heard Zhao Lu's words. Zhen Pingfan's father was definitely not young anymore. Even a middle god emperor would find it difficult to withstand the heavenly tribulation. How powerful must he be? Duan Lingtian's heart trembled just thinking about it. If he were to face such a heavenly tribulation, wouldn't he be reduced to ashes in the blink of an eye? However, our progeny is still fine. Even if the ancestor really does meet with misfortune, martial granduncle will still be there to support him. As for the other progeny, many of their progeny are having a hard time facing the heavenly tribulation without having a successor. Zhao Lu's expression clearly showed how fortunate he was when he said this. Duan Lingtian could understand what Zhao Lu was saying. It was just that some progeny only had one god emperor supporting them, and that god emperor was beginning to feel powerless in the face of the heavenly tribulation of 1,000 years. Once he died, if his progeny did not have a second god emperor to support them, they would lose their backbone. If a progeny's only god emperor dies, what will happen to the people of that progeny? Duan Lingtian asked. Zhao Lu sighed. If that happens, the people of that progeny will have to move away from the floating island they're on. Only a progeny with a god emperor supporting them can occupy a floating island in the Chunyang school's encampment as their base of operations. If a progeny loses a god emperor, the people of that progeny will be assigned to the cultivation grounds of ordinary elders and disciples after they move away from the floating island they occupy. They will no longer enjoy special treatment. Of course, if there are outstanding existences among them, or if they have connections, they can go to other progeny with a god emperor supporting them. Zhao Lu's words made Duan Lingtian realize the reality of the Chunyang school. However, he could understand this reality. After all, there was no such thing as a free lunch. You can enjoy special treatment because your forefather is a god emperor. If your forefather dies and your progeny doesn't have a god emperor, your special treatment will be revoked, and you'll be sent to accompany ordinary elders and disciples. However, that's something the other progeny have to worry about. Yunpeak doesn't have to worry about that. At the very least, our Yunpeak lineage can change its name to the ordinary lineage. Furthermore, even if that time really comes, it will be thousands or even tens of thousands of years later. Besides, who knows if our forefather will make a breakthrough in the next 10,000 years, and become even stronger to face the heavenly tribulation. No one could have predicted such a thing. Duan Lingtian chatted with Zhao Lu on the way to the Chunyang school's encampment. He learned a lot about the Chunyang school from Zhao Lu. For example, there were a total of 19 progeny branches in the Chunyang school. Yunpeak's progeny was just one of them. Among these 19 progeny branches, 7 of them were the strongest because they were all led by void-pierced stage elders. Therefore, they were naturally the 7 strongest progeny branches in the Chunyang school. The remaining 12 progeny branches were led by Jingsu elders. For example, when Duan Lingtian first arrived at the Chunyang school, Lan Xilin's progeny branch was one of them. Elder Zhao Lu, will I be considered a member of Yunpeak's progeny after going through the procedures? Or do I still need to go through other procedures in Yunpeak? Duan Lingtian asked Zhao Lu. He suddenly thought of this question. Hearing this, Zhao Lu smiled and said, after going through the procedures, you can only be considered a disciple of the Chunyang school. If you want to join our progeny branches and become a member of our progeny branches, you need to go through other procedures in our progeny branches and leave the brand of our progeny branches on your identity token. Of course, those imprints can be removed. This is also to allow some people to have more choices. If you feel uncomfortable in any progeny branches and feel bad, as long as you have the ability, you can choose to join another progeny branches if there are other progeny branches that want to accept you. In the progeny branches, this is not considered betrayal. At most, the people of the previous progeny branches will target you. Of course, this kind of thing doesn't happen often in our Chunyang school. A complicated light flashed through Zhao Lu's eyes as he spoke. Although it was just a flash, Duan Lingtian still caught it. Elder Zhao Lu, you seem to be rather emotional when you say these words. Could it be that there's such a person in our Yunpeak? Duan Lingtian was good at reading people's expressions. He could see the change in Zhao Lu's expression at this moment. When Zhao Lu heard this, he smiled wryly and said, "It's no big deal to tell you this. In fact, I'm such a person myself. I, Zhao Lu, was not a member of Yin Feng's bloodline. Instead, I belong to another bloodline. However, in order to allow me to focus on my cultivation without any distractions, that bloodline actually sent people to exterminate my distant clan. When I found out that the instigator of all this was my master at that time, I almost went crazy. Later, my master was expelled from the progeny branches. Because I felt awkward staying in that progeny branches, I switched to Yunpeak. Then, I met my master after that. He treated me like his own son. Unfortunately, he passed away too early. Before I could show him my filial piety, he died under the heavenly tribulation. Chapter 3946. Elder Zhao Lu, I'm sorry. I didn't expect you to have such a tumultuous past. Duan Lingtian was slightly embarrassed. If he had known that his question would reopen Zhao Lu's scar, he would not have said so much. Due to this reason, apart from feeling embarrassed, he was also apologetic. It's all right. Zhao Lu took a deep breath and returned to his senses. He waved his hand nonchalantly and said, "Everyone in Yun Peak knows about this. Even if you don't hear it from me now, you'll hear it from someone else in the future. Furthermore, I have a clear conscience about switching to the Yun Peak lineage. I don't mind what others say about me," Zhao Lu said nonchalantly. Naturally, although Zhao Lu said it nonchalantly, Duan Lingtian could still sense the fluctuation in his emotions. He was no longer as calm as he was before. It seemed like the impact of this matter on him was not as small as he had made it out to be. For the rest of the journey, as long as Zhao Lu did not speak, Duan Lingtian would not speak either. He was afraid he would say the wrong thing again, and that Zhao Lu would hold a grudge against him for what he had said earlier, and did not want to hear him speak again. However, he soon realized he was measuring the heart of a gentleman with his own mean measure. Before they arrived at the place where they had to complete the procedures to enter the sect, Zhao Lu's mood had already returned to normal. He even began to joke with Duan Lingtian. Junior brother Qin has always been called Little Yang Yang by senior granduncle. This might not be a big deal to him, but many people in Yun Peak are talking about this behind his back. Most of them are laughing when they talk about this. When Duan Lingtian heard this, he shook his head and smiled. Although I haven't known Elder Qin for long, based on what I've seen of him, I don't think he cares about this. He might not care about other people talking about it, but what if he knows his disciples and grand-disciples are talking about it as well? As an elder, don't tell me he's shameless? Zhao Lu said with a smile. When Duan Lingtian heard this, he was momentarily speechless. This seemed to be a little unsolvable. As an elder, it was only natural that he would want to be stern and lofty in front of his juniors. Even if he was not stern and lofty, he should at least be amiable. But now, after being addressed as Little Yang Yang, that Elder Qin seemed to be unable to be lofty or serious even if he wanted to. Amiable? An amiable old man was now being called Little Yang Yang? We're here. At this time, Zhao Lu led Duan Lingtian to an even larger floating island. This floating island is the most central floating island in the Chunyang School's encampment. It's also called the Wanxiang Island. The word Wanxiang has the meaning of all-encompassing. In the sect, the matters that can be handled by the side branches are handled by the side branches. However, the matters that need to be handled by the sect members are handled on the island of versatility. Besides, the cultivation grounds of the ordinary elders and disciples are also located on the island of versatility. In addition, the various halls of the sect, such as the disciplinary hall, the trading hall, the martial arts hall, etc., are all located on the island of versatility. I'll show you around the island of versatility after you're done with the procedures to enter the sect, and show you the way, Zhao Lu said to Duan Lingtian while glancing at the gigantic floating island. Thank you, Elder Zhao Lu, Duan Lingtian said. Don't mention it, Zhao Lu said indifferently. As they entered the island, Zhao Lu raised his eyebrows as if he had suddenly recalled something, and said to Duan Lingtian in a straightforward manner, Duan Lingtian, if I'm not mistaken, there will be people from the other side branches waiting for you at the sect affair hall. When the time comes, they will surely offer you an olive branch and tempt you with some benefits. I'll tell you what the Yun Peak branch is willing to give you as a welcome gift. As Zhao Lu was about to reveal the conditions of the Yun Peak branch, Duan Lingtian interrupted him with a slight frown. Elder Zhao Lu, you're being a little too rude. Didn't I tell you and Elder Qin yesterday that I'll definitely join the Yun Peak branch? You're underestimating me, Duan Lingtian. Anyone would be displeased seeing this, as Zhao Lu's actions clearly showed that he did not trust Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian. On the other hand, Zhao Lu did not become angry after seeing Duan Lingtian's displeasure, but said with a smile, Duan Lingtian, as the saying goes, brothers should settle their debts clearly. It's better to be clear about some things. Yesterday, we also mentioned what you said in front of me and Elder Qin to Senior Granduncle. Senior Granduncle even scolded Elder Qin, saying that he shouldn't have spoken out of turn and tried to force you to stay. Martial Granduncle said that if the other branches offer better conditions and you're tempted, you can go there. However, the The Yin Peak branch will also give you a welcome gift, so that you won't be at a disadvantage. Of course, even if you don't choose the Yin Peak branch in the end, we won't hold a grudge against you. Martial Granduncle said that even if you join the other branches, it won't affect your friendship. When he mentioned the word friendship, Zhao Lu's gaze clearly changed. His martial granduncle was the strongest of the Pure Sun sect's Quiet Void Elders, a God Emperor. Yet he had taken the initiative to befriend a God Emperor, a lower God Emperor at that. Usually, if a lesser God Emperor wanted to talk about friendship with his martial granduncle, he would think that the other party was not worthy or qualified. But now everything had reversed. His martial granduncle had accepted Duan Lingtian as a friend. Elder Zhao Lu, you don't have to give me anything else. As for Elder Zhan, I'll talk to him. Duan Lingtian shook his head and said, I've already accepted the welcome gift before coming here with Elder Zhan and Elder Qin. The 1,000,000 taels of divine crystals were still in his spatial ring. He would never forget about it. After leaving the Linghu family, he wanted to return it to Zhen Pingfan, but Zhen Pingfan was unwilling to accept it. He even said that it was given to him by the Linghu family, and that he should not accept it without doing anything. This made him feel both helpless and grateful. Elder Zhao Lu, let's go. Duan Lingtian urged when he saw Zhao Lu standing still. It was unknown whether he was thinking about something or reporting something to Zhen Pingfan. Zhao Lu only regained his senses when he heard this. He looked at Duan Lingtian with a complicated expression. A hint of admiration flashed in his eyes before he continued to lead the way. Not long after, Duan Lingtian arrived in the air above a spacious square. On one side of the square was a building that occupied a large area. It looked like it was formed by connecting many palaces. This is the sect hall. Zhao Lu led Duan Lingtian forward and landed in front of the entrance of the palace. A gigantic stone tablet could be seen erected at the side of the entrance. The words Sect Affairs Hall were engraved on it in a flamboyant manner. Duan Lingtian saw this stone tablet from afar. It was so huge that it was almost as tall as the sect hall in front of him. The sect hall is the place where the sect handles its affairs. For example, elders and disciples of all ranks have to come here if they meet the requirements for promotion. Before that, they have to go to the assessment hall to pass the assessment and be recognized by the assessment hall. Ordinary people have to wait until the Chunyang school accepts disciples. They also have to pass many complicated assessments before they can enter the Chunyang school. However, you don't have to do any of that. This is because you're a person specially recruited by the Chunyang school. You have special privileges. Putting aside your combat strength, just the fact that you've become a divine emperor before you're 3,000 years old is enough for you to be exempted from the assessment and enter our Chunyang school. Zhao Lu paused for a moment before he continued. However, Duan Lingtian, I have to tell you something in advance. Duan Lingtian looked at Zhao Lu in confusion. Zhao Lu stopped in his tracks. Zhao Lu continued. That is, although you can be exempted from the assessment when you enter our Chunyang school, you'll only be an ordinary disciple of our Chunyang school from the beginning. Martial Granduncle told me that when he was in the Tianlong clan, he promised you that once you enter the Chunyang school, he'll give you the treatment of a true martial disciple, the highest-ranking disciple in the Chunyang school. However, that was given by him personally and not by the sect. If you want to become a true martial disciple in the sect, you'll have to fight for it yourself. Of course, Martial Granduncle also told me that. At that time, he'll still give you the treatment of a true martial disciple that he promised you. It'll be equivalent to you enjoying the treatment of 2 true martial disciples after you become a true martial disciple in the Chunyang school. As for the assessment hall, you can take the assessment at any time. Zhao Lu said. I thought you had something to tell me, Elder Zhao Lu. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. He looked extremely surprised. This is only a small matter, and I think it's only natural. It's good enough that I can be exempted from the tedious assessment to enter the sect. As for the status and treatment, I'll have to rely on myself. I hope I can rely on myself. Duan Lingtian's straightforward words caused Zhao Lu's gaze to soften. I've underestimated you. With your strength and talent, it's only a small matter for you to become a true martial disciple, Zhao Lu said. A true martial disciple. Duan Lingtian suddenly thought of someone and asked curiously, Elder Zhao Lu, is Lan Xilin a true martial disciple? Lan Xilin? Zhao Lu was stunned when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. Then he nodded awkwardly. He's a true martial disciple. He passed the assessment as a lower divine emperor 300 years ago. The reason Zhao Lu was stunned was because before he joined Yunfeng's bloodline, he was in the same bloodline as Lan Xilin. His master, who had been expelled from the sect, was a disciple of Lan Xilin's great-grandfather. He was also Lan Xilin's martial granduncle. Let's go in. After Zhao Lu regained his senses, he brought Duan Lingtian with him and walked slowly into the sect affairs hall. Chapter 3947. The entrance to the sect hall was a spacious place where a few people were standing. These people all had identity tokens hanging from their waists. They were the identity tokens of the Chunyang School's disciples. On his way to the Chunyang School yesterday, he noticed that although the identity tokens of the Chunyang School's disciples were different because of their different identities and statuses, there were still some similarities. For example, there was a Tai Chi pattern in the four corners of the identity tokens. Even Zhen Pingfan's identity token of the Jingshu Elder was no exception. Elder Zhao Lu. As Zhao Lu came in with Duan Lingtian, many people recognized him and greeted him or saluted him. At the same time, some people's eyes fell on Duan Lingtian at the right time, and their eyes flashed with curiosity. Who is this man? Elder Zhao Lu is leading the way for him in person. He doesn't have the identity token of the Chunyang School's disciple, so he shouldn't be a disciple of the Chunyang School. Yesterday, I heard that Elder Qin Wuyang of Yunfeng brought back Duan Lingtian, who has recently become famous in Tunglung Province, from the Tianlong clan. If I'm not mistaken, it's him. Duan Lingtian, the one with the cultivation of a lower divine emperor from the Tianlong clan, who killed two middle-level divine emperors who tried to kill him? It's him. I remember. I saw the floating image pearl of him killing the two middle-level divine emperors. Although his appearance was not very clear in the floating image pearl, his figure and clothes are the same. He is Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian did not expect that a newcomer like him would cause a sensation in the sect hall as soon as he followed Zhao Lu into the sect hall. More and more people gathered around, looking at him and pointing at him as if they were watching a monkey show. Duan Lingtian didn't feel anything about this, and his expression was as calm as before. However, Zhao Lu's expression did not look too good. I'm here to bring Duan Lingtian to complete the procedures to enter the sect. If there's nothing important, stop nagging here. After all, this was Elder Ling Su. Zhao Lu's words were still useful. After a while, the crowd dispersed one after another, but most of them were still looking at Duan Lingtian from the corner of their eyes. After that, everything went smoothly. Under the leadership of Zhao Lu, after the school affairs hall confirmed the identity of Duan Lingtian, they processed the procedures for him to enter the school. At the same time, Duan Lingtian also received his Chunyang School disciple identity token. Of course, it was just the identity token of an ordinary disciple of Chunyang School. The disciples of Chunyang School and Chunyang School were divided into ordinary disciples and true disciples. Among the ordinary disciples, there were not only gods and god kings, but also god emperors. Their identity tokens showed that they were disciples of the spirit realm, disciples of the king realm, disciples of the emperor realm. As for the descendants of the higher-ups of Chunyang School who had not yet become gods, they were not considered disciples of Chunyang School. Only when they became gods could they officially enter Chunyang School. Until then, they were only considered family members of Chunyang School's disciples. Moreover, Chunyang School was very strict with its management of family members. Only those who were god emperors and above were qualified to have their family members stay in Chunyang School, and they had to be immediate family members. As for those who were god emperors and above, they were qualified to have their family members stay in Chunyang School, regardless of whether they were immediate family members or collateral relatives. They could even have their friends stay in Chunyang School for a long time. This was the privilege of god emperors in Chunyang School. As for the true disciples, they were all divine emperors, and they were all outstanding figures among their peers. Being a true disciple did not only depend on one's cultivation. There were different criteria for becoming a true disciple, such as god emperors. However, not every disciple of a god emperor could become a true disciple. Age and strength were also important. Lan Xilin, for example, had just become a lower god emperor and participated in the true disciple assessment, but he had failed. It was only a few hundred years later that he barely passed. The older one was, the harder the true disciple assessment would be. The difficulty of the true disciple assessment was based on the difficulty level. This was also the reason why Zhao Lu felt Duanling Tian would definitely pass the true martial disciples assessment. Duanling Tian. Just as Duanling Tian received his identity token and completed the procedures to enter the Chunyang school and was about to leave with Zhao Lu, they were stopped by someone. The person who stopped them was a middle-aged man of medium build who was a little fat. He was led by two people with a bright smile on his face and a pair of small eyes that gave him a shifty look. Behind the middle-aged man was another young man, who was clearly his junior. "What are you doing, Huang Feng?" Zhao Lu asked as he glanced at the man in front of him. At this moment, Duanling Tian noticed that the middle-aged man also had the identity token of an elderling Su hanging from his waist. He was also a higher god emperor. "Junior brother Zhao Lu, why do you ask when you already know the answer?" The middle-aged man called Huang Feng grinned. "I'm here on my grandmaster's instructions. Why don't you ask him?" Zhao Lu's expression darkened at Huang Feng's words, but he did not say anything else. This Huang Feng was elderling Su of another branch of the Pure Yang sect. He was also the grand disciple of the only divine emperor of his branch. Although his strength was not as strong as elderling Su, he had a protective elderling Su. Elderling Su. Elderling Su was the strongest person in the Chunyang school below the god emperor level. What's more, Huang Feng had a grandmaster, Elder Jingxiu, who was in charge of the branch. Duanling Tian. Huang Feng smiled at Duanling Tian when he saw Zhao Lu keeping quiet. He said in a clear voice, "I'm Huang Feng from the Jade Sun branch. I'm here on the orders of my grandmaster, Qi Yang, to invite you to join the Jade Sun branch. My grand ancestor said that as long as you, Duanling Tian, are willing to join the Jade Sun progeny, he'll take you as his direct disciple. At that time, many spirit void elders in my Jade Sun progeny and other progenies will have to address you as junior uncle." In the Pure Sun sect, the division of seniority was very clear. This had nothing to do with age. Duanling Tian was young, but if he was accepted as a disciple by a god emperor of the Chunyang school, he would gain a bunch of disciples and grand disciples. Take the god emperor of the Jade Sun branch for example. If Duanling Tian really became his disciple, not just Huang Feng but even Zhao Lu and Qin Wuyang would have to address Duanling Tian as junior uncle. As soon as Huang Feng finished speaking, Zhao Lu smiled faintly before Duanling Tian could reply. "Huang Feng, is your Jade Sun progeny really going to take advantage of this situation?" It was a good thing to be accepted as a disciple by a god emperor. However, in Zhao Lu's opinion, most of the god emperors in the Chunyang school would be happy to accept a genius like Duanling Tian as their disciple. That would be good for them as well. The good thing was that once Duanling Tian grew and surpassed them, they could proudly say that they had a disciple who had surpassed them. And once that disciple led the Pure Sun sect to the next level, while that disciple's name would go down in history, they would also go down in history. Duanling Tian. This time, Huang Feng ignored Zhao Lu. He looked at Duanling Tian and continued, "In addition, as long as Duanling Tian joins the Jade Sun branch, we will give you another 2 million divine crystals." And Huang Feng didn't just promise divine crystals, he also promised a lot of good things, such as emperor-level divine pellets and all kinds of treasures. Many of the onlookers couldn't help but click their tongues when they heard Huang Feng's words. The Jade Sun branch is really generous. Is it worth it to pay such a big price for a Duanling Tian? Although Duanling Tian killed 2 mid-level god emperors as a low-level god emperor with the help of the floating image pearl, who knows if those 2 mid-level god emperors had internal injuries or hidden injuries? Even if the Tianlong clan says no, we can still assume that the Tianlong clan is bragging about Duanling Tian. They won't say anything negative about Duanling Tian. I think so too. There's no need to rope in a low-level god emperor who hasn't grown up yet, right? Many people shook their heads in disgust. Be that as it may. However, I'm afraid you don't know the situation of the Jade Sun Branch. It's said that Elder Jing Su, the only God Emperor in the Jade Sun Branch, was injured in the last heavenly tribulation. I'm afraid she won't last more than 8,000 years. Suddenly, someone whispered to the person next to him. Immediately, the people around him were in an uproar. At the same time, they also lowered their voices. Is this true? Really? If that's the case, then it's understandable. Although the group of people were whispering in low voices, with Huang Feng's cultivation, how could he not hear them? His face immediately darkened, and he glanced at the source of the voice. The group of people immediately shut their mouths, not daring to say anything else. However, they could not hold it in any longer, and began to communicate through voice transmissions. Look at Elder Huang Feng's expression. It seems like this matter is most likely true. Is the Jade Sun Branch planning to recruit Duan Lingtian and cultivate him into the next God Emperor? It should be. After all, Duan Lingtian isn't even 3,000 years old, but he's already a low-level God Emperor. In the past, he didn't have much of a background. Now that he's in the Chunyang school, if the Jade Sun Branch spends a lot of effort to cultivate him, it won't be difficult for them to produce another God Emperor within 10,000 years. At that time, even if the current God Emperor of the Jade Sun Branch falls under the heavenly tribulation, his branch will have another backer to rely on. They won't have to disband. In fact, Duan Lingtian was shocked when Huang Feng from the Jade Sun progeny offered 2 million divine crystals. Were all the God Emperors of the Chunyang school that rich? Previously, Zhen Pingfan had casually given him 10 million divine crystals. Now the Jade Sun Branch wanted to give him 2 million divine crystals. However, based on Huang Feng's words, it was obvious that his grandmaster, the only God Emperor of the Jade Sun Branch, was behind this. At this time, even Zhao Lu couldn't help but frown when he heard Huang Feng's words. He never expected the Jade Sun Branch to be so determined. Chapter 3948. The Jade Sun progeny was treating Duan Lingtian as their last straw of hope. For a moment, when Zhao Lu looked at Huang Feng again, the look in his eyes became complicated. In the history of Chunyang School, there were many branches that could only disband due to the lack of successors. The people in the branches all left the floating islands that they regarded as their home. Some stayed together and worked hard. Some of them turned to other branches. Some could not recover from the setback. The branches that were doing well were completely shattered, all because of the loss of their only God Emperor. Of course, Zhao Lu did not feel much pity for them. This was the cruelty of the world. Only the strong could enjoy special treatment and set the rules. In Chunyang School, no branch was an exception. Duan Lingtian, I hope you can consider it. This is my soul orb. Once you've made up your mind and have an answer in mind, contact me at any time. After Huang Feng finished explaining the conditions of the Jade Sun progeny, he gave his soul pearl to Duan Lingtian. Before he left, he paused and sent a voice transmission to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, if you join the Jade Sun progeny, apart from the things Grand Ancestor promised, I, Huang Feng, am also willing to give you half of my fortune. After saying this, Huang Feng left with the young man behind him. Before the young man left, he transmitted his voice to Duan Lingtian. Senior brother Duan, if you join the Jade Sun branch, we'll help you become a God Emperor. It's the best choice for you to join the Chunyang school. In the end, the young man introduced himself. He was Huang Feng's disciple. After Huang Feng left, Zhao Lu and Duan Lingtian, who were about to leave, were stopped again. This time, the person who stopped them was an old man. The old man had white hair and a ruddy complexion. He wore a blue robe and had an amiable expression. As soon as he entered, he looked at Zhao Lu and said, Zhao Lu, I'd like to have a word with Duan Lingtian. Senior Marshal Brother Lu, please. In front of this old man, Zhao Lu's attitude was clearly different. Puzzled, Duan Lingtian glanced at the old man's waist and found the answer from his identity token. He's Elder Yushu from Chunyang School. Chunyang School's Elder Jade Void was one of the strongest existences in Chunyang School below the God Emperor level. None of them were weaker than the Golden Dragon Elder of the Tianlong clan. They were definitely the best of the best among the high-level divine emperors. Duan Lingtian, my name is Lu Yuan. I'm from the tyrannical saber lineage. The old man looked at Duan Lingtian and introduced himself with a smile. My grandfather, the void-pierced stage elder Lu Jingtao, is the head of the tyrannical saber lineage. As soon as Lu Yuan spoke, Zhao Lu's solemn voice rang in Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian, this is Lu Yuan, a jade void elder from the tyrannical saber progeny. He's also the grandson of old ancestor Lu Jingtao, a void-pierced stage elder and the strongest person in the tyrannical saber progeny. Zhao Lu's voice transmission and Lu Yuan's words resounded in Duan Lingtian's ears almost at the same time. Before Duan Lingtian could recover from his shock, the onlookers in the surroundings had just recovered from the shock of seeing Lu Yuan. It's Elder Lu Yuan. Oh my god. Even Elder Yushu came personally. Duan Lingtian. What a great honor. The tyrannical saber lineage is actually tempted by Duan Lingtian. Is Duan Lingtian's temptation that great? Lu Yuan's appearance shocked everyone. In fact, there were also people from other lineages nearby. However, after the leader of the Jade Sun lineage, Elder Su, Huangfeng, spoke up, they thought of the conditions that their lineage could offer and asked for the opinions of the higher-ups. However, none of them showed up. It was because the things that they could offer were inferior to the Jade Sun lineage. Instead of showing up and being rejected, it was better not to show up. This way, they could still save some face. However, when they saw that the tyrannical saber lineage had come, and it was even Elder Yushu Lu Yuan, they were all shocked. The tyrannical saber lineage values Duan Lingtian so much. In Chunyang School, there were a total of 19 lineages. Among them, 7 of the great lineages were overseen by void-pierced stage elders, while the other 12 lineages were overseen by quiet void stage elders. The tyrannical saber lineage was considered relatively strong among the 7 great lineages, because it had 3 god emperor experts. It was also one of the only 2 lineages that had 3 god emperor experts among the 7 great lineages. Elder Lu Yuan. Now, while Duan Lingtian greeted Lu Yuan with a smile, he heard the discussions and whispers of the people around him. He had a basic understanding of the tyrannical saber lineage. The tyrannical saber lineage was one of the stronger lineages in Chunyang School. It was also one of the only 2 lineages that had 3 god emperor experts among the 19 lineages in Chunyang School. As for the other lineage that had 3 god emperor experts, Duan Lingtian guessed that Zhen Pingfan, Qin Wuyang, Zhao Lu, and the Yun Peak lineage that he was in might be one of them. In the Yun Peak lineage, the god emperor experts that he knew were Quiet Void Stage Elder Zhen Pingfan, Void Pierce Stage Elder Zhen Yunfeng, and Chunyang School's Sect Master. However, although the Chunyang School's Sect Master is from the Yun Peak lineage, can he still be considered a god emperor expert of the Yun Peak lineage? Thinking of this, Duan Lingtian felt that he should not count the Chunyang School's Sect Master as one of them. After all, he was the Sect Master of a sect. He controlled all the major lineages, and could no longer be considered a member of any lineage. Duan Lingtian. Lu Yuan looked at Duan Lingtian and said with a smile, "It's not that our tyrannical saber lineage can't provide the conditions that the Jade Sun lineage mentioned, but it's very difficult for us to give it to you alone. However, although the material conditions that we can give are inferior to the Jade Sun lineage, our tyrannical saber lineage can promise to let you become a disciple of one of the 2 quiet void stage elders. In addition, when the void pierce stage elders are free, they can also guide you." As soon as Lu Yuan said this, the scene immediately went into an uproar. A void pierce stage elder will personally guide him? At this moment, some of the people who were originally calm had their eyes bloodshot when they looked at Duan Lingtian. Void Pierce stage elders were the most powerful existences in the Chunyang School. They symbolized the supreme powerlessness of the Chunyang School. Usually they were elusive. It was difficult to even meet them, let alone get them to guide him. However, what made these people even angrier was, Duan Lingtian in front of them still had a calm expression after hearing Elder Lu Yuan's promise from the tyrannical saber lineage. It was as if he was not surprised at all. Wasn't this a surprise? This Duan Lingtian is doing this on purpose, right? He's pretending to be calm to seek better conditions, right? Isn't this guy too greedy? Duan Lingtian, consider it. This is... Elder Lu Yuan said with a smile as he took out a lineage's soul orb from his storage ring. It was obviously his own soul orb. However, before he could pass the soul orb to Duan Lingtian, before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Duan Lingtian. Elder Lu Yuan, there's no need to give me the soul orb. Today here in front of you, I'll make a statement. I, Duan Lingtian, have already decided which lineage I will join just now. So I'm sorry. As Duan Lingtian spoke, he smiled apologetically. Although Lu Yuan was a little surprised when he heard this, he still took a deep look at Duan Lingtian. Everyone has their own aspirations. Our tyrannical saber lineage won't force you. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Yuan looked at Zhao Lu. After greeting him, he floated away. In the blink of an eye, his elegant back disappeared before everyone's eyes. As soon as Lu Yuan left, many gazes immediately landed on Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian has decided again? Now he rejected Elder Lu Yuan's soul orb. However, he accepted Elder Huangfeng's soul orb just now. Could it be that he's planning to join the Righteous Young lineage? The Righteous Young lineage doesn't have a Void Pierce stage elder. So what if there's no Void Pierce stage elder? The Righteous Young lineage is in urgent need of nurturing another God Emperor expert. The others in the Righteous Young lineage obviously don't have a chance. If Duan Lingtian goes to the Righteous Young lineage, he will definitely be heavily nurtured. If I were Duan Lingtian, I would also choose the Righteous Young lineage. Wouldn't it be better to become the leader of the Righteous Young lineage in the future? Hearing the discussions around him, even though Zhao Lu already had an idea, he still couldn't help but waver. Duan Lingtian. Zhao Lu looked at Duan Lingtian with a puzzled expression. Duan Lingtian smiled and said, Elder Zhao Lu, you and I will be members of the same lineage in the future. Let's take care of each other in the future. Of course, Duan Lingtian said these words on purpose. It was because he didn't want everyone, including the members of the Righteous Young lineage, to misunderstand him. Zhao Lu was stunned for a moment after hearing his words. Then he smiled and said, The Cloud Peak welcomes you to join us. The Cloud Peak lineage. Duan Lingtian actually decided to join the Cloud Peak lineage? For a moment, everyone who originally thought that Duan Lingtian wanted to join the Righteous Young lineage was dumbfounded. What benefits did the Cloud Peak lineage give him? They actually made him give up on the Righteous Young lineage. The Righteous Young lineage is prepared to spend all their resources to nurture him. However, he didn't choose the Righteous Young lineage? I'm very curious. What benefits did the Cloud Peak lineage give him? It can't be that he directly chose the Cloud Peak lineage, because the elders of the Cloud Peak lineage brought him back, right? I don't think that's the only reason. In this world, the strong are revered, and profit is the most important thing. A single misstep can cause one's strength to not be able to keep up and die under the Millennium Tribulation. Hearing the discussions around him, Duan Lingtian looked at them and smiled faintly. If any of you know the Righteous Young lineage, please pass on my message. I, Duan Lingtian, do not aspire to control any lineage in Chunyang School. I have confidence in becoming a great god. However, when that time comes, I won't be in Chunyang School anymore. At this moment, Duan Lingtian seemed to have become much taller in the eyes of the Chunyang School students. At the same time, they deeply felt Duan Lingtian's ambition. Duan Lingtian's ambition was not limited to Chunyang School. He wanted to go even higher, even further. My apologies, Elder Huangfeng. At the same time, Duan Lingtian sent a message to Huangfeng through the soul orb he'd left behind. He hadn't actually planned to accept Huangfeng's soul orb earlier. He'd only taken it because he'd been shocked by the Righteous Young lineage's generosity. Chapter 3949. Duan Lingtian knew very well. The reason why the Jade Sun faction had paid such a high price to recruit him was because the leader of the Jade Sun faction, Elder Jingxiu, Qi Yuyang, wanted to nurture him into a successor and protect the Jade Sun faction. And this was something that he could never do. If not for this, the Jade Sun branch's offer might have tempted him. However, he had already decided to join the Yin Peak branch. However, because of the Jade Sun branch's goal, Even if he did not plan to join the Yin Peak branch, he would not join the Jade Sun branch. If he expressed that he would not stay in the Jade Sun branch in the future, the Jade Sun branch would not have paid such a high price to recruit him. His ambition was not in the Chunyang school. This was the reason why Duan Lingtian had rejected the Jade Sun branch. It was a reason that no one could refute. Elder Zhao Lu, let's go. Duan Lingtian called out to Zhao Lu and took the lead to walk out of the door. When Zhao Lu caught up to Duan Lingtian, the others finally regained their senses. Their eyes were filled with complicated emotions as they looked at Duan Lingtian. A young man who's not even 3,000 years old actually has such great ambition. Is this arrogance or confidence? Based on his current achievements, it's more likely that he's confident. If I were him and became a lower divine emperor at this age, I might think the same way. Having a high cultivation base doesn't mean he's strong. Didn't you see the floating image pro recording of him killing the 2 middle-level divine emperor men of sacrifice? So what if I saw it? Who knows if the 2 middle-level divine emperor men of sacrifice were already injured, and he took advantage of them. In the sect affairs hall, some of the Chunyang school disciples thought Duan Lingtian was confident, while others thought Duan Lingtian was arrogant. In any case, the people from the other branches did not show up. After the Jade Sun branch and the Tyrannical Saber branch had shown up to invite Duan Lingtian to join the Jade Sun branch and the Tyrannical Saber branch. First of all, they knew they were not as good as the Tyrannical Saber branch. Secondly, they didn't have the same conditions as the Jade Sun lineage. Furthermore, there were a few branches that had similar thoughts as the Jade Sun branch. They wanted Duan Lingtian to join their branch and nurture him to become a God Emperor, so that he could take over their branch's only God Emperor position in the future, and continue to protect their branch. After leaving the sect affair hall, Zhao Lu glanced at Duan Lingtian, and smilingly said, Duan Lingtian, shall I show you around the Island of Versatility? The Island of Versatility is very big. Duan Lingtian gently shook his head. Elder Zhao Lu, there's no need to rush. Bring me to the examination hall first. In less than an hour, Duan Lingtian and Zhao Lu entered the sect hall again. At this moment, the group of people in the sect affairs hall were still talking about what had just happened. They kept talking about Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian? Why is he here again? Didn't he just leave? The Puryang sect's disciples who were still in a daze finally had an answer when they saw Zhao Lu bringing Duan Lingtian to the registration counter and taking out a piece of paper. Duan Lingtian became a true martial disciple? Oh my god! It's only been less than an hour and Duan Lingtian has already become a true martial disciple? Since when did the true martial disciple test become so simple? In the history of our Pure Sun sect, the record of a lower godly emperor becoming a true martial disciple has always been. I think it took him 4 hours and a quarter of an hour to pass the true martial disciple exam, right? That means Duan Lingtian broke the record for a lower god emperor true martial disciple in Chunyang school? It's obvious. Duan Lingtian is too strong, isn't he? Could it be that the 2 middle-level god emperors he killed in the Tianlong clan were not injured middle-level god emperors? Could he really kill a middle-level god emperor? Don't forget, the old ancestor who set the record for the low godly emperor true martial disciple exam was over 8,000 years old. Not only was he a low godly emperor, but he was also over 8,000 years old. As far as I know, the examination of a true martial disciple is not only based on cultivation but also age. The younger the age, the easier the examination. So, Duan Lingtian passed the examination so quickly because the examination was easy? That should be the case. Otherwise, how could it be so exaggerated? He's not even 3,000 years old, but the difficulty of the examination is not even half of that of the ancestor who set the record. In the beginning, when Duan Lingtian was going through the formalities to become a true disciple, many people were shocked by the speed at which he passed the examination. After some people reminded them of Duan Lingtian's age and the rules of the true martial disciple's assessment, they finally understood that Duan Lingtian must have passed the true martial disciple's assessment so easily that any primitive divine emperor would be able to pass it. Hearing these people's words, Duan Lingtian was calm. He ignored them and went through the formalities to become a true disciple. However, Zhao Lu, who was next to Duan Lingtian, heard these people's words and couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. Simple? These guys. I'm afraid they don't know that those guys in the examination hall gave Duan Lingtian the most difficult examination of a lower god emperor true martial disciple. Although Duan Lingtian is only a lower god emperor with his strength, except for a few true martial disciples under 10,000 years old in Chunyang School, I'm afraid no one can defeat him. These were the thoughts that appeared in Zhao Lu's mind at this moment. He felt as though he was listening to a group of idiots when he heard the whispers behind him. However, Duan Lingtian's temperament is really amazing. So many people look down on him, but he's still so calm. Zhao Lu could not help but sigh inwardly. If he were in Duan Lingtian's shoes, he would have been arrogant and would not allow others to misunderstand him. If he were in Duan Lingtian's shoes, he would have stepped forward and sneered at these people. Moreover, he would have told them the difficulty of the examination he had passed, and asked them to go to the examination hall if they did not believe him. Are all people from the Devata realms so calm? That's not right. I also have some people from the Devata realms around me. But they shouldn't be so calm when they were at Duan Lingtian's age. Zhao Lu was unaware that the people from the Devata realms were all from the Devata realms. Most of the people around him who came from the Devata realms had grown up with silver spoons in their mouths. They had powerful backgrounds in the Devata realms. Naturally, their temperament could not be compared to Duan Lingtian, who came from the mundane realm. Moreover, Duan Lingtian was reincarnated. Although he had only lived for about 20 years in his past life, he had traveled to the ends of the earth and seen all kinds of people in the world. While Duan Lingtian was going through the procedures to become a true martial disciple, a series of messages came from the examination hall on the island of all manifestations. Duan Lingtian, who came from the Tianlong clan, is as strong as an ordinary elder Qing Su. Among the prodigies under 10,000 years old in Chunyang School, I'm afraid no one under 8,000 years old is a match for him. There are still 50 years before the Seven Mansions banquet that is held once every 10,000 years. If he can break through and become a medium divine lord in these 50 years, he'll definitely be ranked in the top 10 in the Seven Mansions banquet. Not only did these messages reach the people from the major branches of Chunyang School, but they also reached the ears of the decision-makers in Chunyang School. In Chunyang School, apart from the major branches, there was an independent group of people who were the decision-makers in Chunyang School. These decision-makers were mainly responsible for the management of Chunyang School. The decision-makers were led by the sect leader of Chunyang School. Below him were the vice sect leaders and the other decision-makers. These people were from the major branches of Chunyang School. Almost every branch had someone in the decision-makers in Chunyang School. Decision-makers who are in Chunyang School, please come to the conference hall on the island of all manifestations. The sect master of the Pure Sun sect was a middle-aged man with a stalwart figure, handsome face, and indifferent eyes. After he sent out a message, the people who received his message immediately began to inform the other members of the decision-making team. When Duan Lingtian and Zhao Lu left under the watchful eyes of the people in the sect affairs pavilion, all the decision-makers in the Pure Sun sect gathered together and began a solemn meeting. The meeting centered around Duan Lingtian. Everyone, you should know the significance of the Seven Mansions banquet to Chunyang School. In the conference hall, the Chunyang School sect leader stood at the head of the table with his hands clasped behind his back. He glanced at the people below him and spoke in a low voice. Sect leader, if you have something to say, please say it directly. Below him, an old man said with a smile. At this moment, the Chunyang School sect leader continued. The Seven Mansions banquet will determine whether Chunyang School will have a chance to produce an upper great god emperor. The current upper great god emperor of the Heaven's Roar sect of the state capital of Qing was born after the Seven Mansions banquet. At that time, an outstanding prodigy from the state capital of Qing made it to the top 10 of the Seven Mansions banquet. The Chunyang School sect leader said in a low voice, "At first, I did not have high hopes for this Seven Mansions banquet. However, there is now a single person who has brought hope to the Pure Sun sect," the Chunyang School sect leader said. Sect leader, At this moment, another old man below him spoke up. I know this person you're talking about. He's from the Tianlong clan. Yunfeng brought him back to the sect, and has already expressed his willingness to join Yunfeng. If that's the case, allocate more resources to Yunfeng to cultivate him. As long as he can become a middle-level great god emperor within 50 years, based on the strength he's shown so far, he'll definitely make it to the top 10 of the 7 Mansions banquet. As the old man finished speaking, he looked at the people present with a smile. Everyone, what do you think of my suggestion? When the others heard the old man's words, they all smiled bitterly. Who didn't know that this old man was from Yunfeng, just like the sect leader? If it were any other time, they would naturally object to the idea of allocating more resources to Yunfeng since they were from other branches. But now how could they object? Chapter 3950. Duan Lingtian followed Zhao Lu around the island of versatility after completing the procedures for becoming a true martial disciple in the sect hall. Zhao Lu also introduced him to everything on the island of versatility. For example, where was the Law Enforcement Hall, the Artifact Hall, the Divine Pill Hall, the Free Trade Square, and the cultivation grounds of the non-branch disciples of the Chunyang School. Along the way, Duan Lingtian also saw the vastness of the island of versatility. It was like a large city with mountains and rivers mixed in it. In addition, some places on the island of versatility were heavily guarded. Duan Lingtian could not help but click his tongue. Some elders of the Spirit Void Realm were even dispatched. Duan Lingtian even saw a Jade Void Realm elder, who was known as the strongest person below the Emperor Immortal in the Chunyang School. Even Zhao Lu had to respectfully address him as Martial Uncle. However, he was not from the branch of Yin Peak. Duan Lingtian. Just as Duan Lingtian and Zhao Lu were about to leave the island of versatility and return to Yin Peak Island, Zhao Lu suddenly stopped and smiled at Duan Lingtian, who also stopped with a puzzled look on his face. I have good news. Zhao Lu smiled brightly. I just received a message. After you pass the most difficult Lower Divine Emperor True Martial Disciple assessment, the sect master led the decision-makers of the sect to gather for a meeting. This meeting mainly revolves around you. Duan Lingtian was stunned by Zhao Lu's words. Me? Even if he had passed the most difficult Lower Divine Emperor True Disciple assessment set by the examination hall, it should not have caused such a big commotion. Even the sect master of the Chunyang School held a meeting for him? As for who the decision-makers of the Chunyang School were, Zhao Lu had mentioned it to him before, so he knew that it was an independent group that did not belong to the major branches. It was mainly responsible for managing the sect and managing the affairs of the sect. In the decision-makers group, there were people from all the major branches. There were also many people from the Chunyang School, who did not have any branches to rely on. In the Chunyang School, those who did not have any branches to rely on were also known as the Chunyang School's disciples. The meeting ended not long ago. Seeing Duan Lingtian's shock, Zhao Lu's smile remained. During the meeting, the sect master mentioned something. The elders of Yin Peak were the first to agree, and then the rest of the higher-ups unanimously agreed on something. Do you know what it is? Asked Zhao Lu smiled. Duan Lingtian shook his head. How could he possibly know? He didn't participate in that meeting. The meeting has decided that the sect will hand over a batch of resources to the Yin Peak lineage and use them on you. Zhao Lu grinned. I'm afraid you'll be able to get the resources in a few days at most. Zhao was sect's disciple. The sect master of Chunyang School had called a meeting of the decision-makers just to give him benefits. Although his performance in the examination hall was not bad, and he had even broken the Chunyang School's record for passing the True Disciple assessment. Even so, it was not that bad, right? The Chunyang School's sect master was an emperor god, and there should also be emperor gods in the decision-makers group. Even if they were not emperor gods, they must be the best among the god emperors. Did this group of people gather for a meeting just to discuss benefits for him, a low-level god emperor? At this moment, even Duan Lingtian subconsciously had a thought. Could it be that this was also the work of that elder Zhenping fan of the Jingxu sect? Thinking of this, Duan Lingtian looked at Zhao Lu and said with a wry smile. Elder Zhao Lu, did Elder Zhen ask the sect master to do this? That's not very good, is it? Duan Lingtian was really flattered to receive such treatment when he had just arrived. He could imagine that once this news spread, the eyes of all the true martial disciples in the Pure Yang sect would turn red with jealousy. Martial granduncle? After hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Zhao Lu was stunned at first. After a while he regained his senses and realized what Duan Lingtian meant. For a moment, Zhao Lu could not help but shake his head and say, Duan Lingtian, you think too highly of Martial Granduncle. Martial Granduncle's status in the sect is needless to say. However, let alone him, even if he and the sect master's teacher, the leader of our Cloud Peak, could make the sect master make such a suggestion, the other members of the decision makers would definitely reject it. Don't forget. In the sect, other than our Cloud Peak, there are many other branches. Excluding our Cloud Peak, there are still 6 other branches that have Void Pierce stage elders overseeing them. In terms of strength, if the sect master is not included, our Cloud Peak won't be ranked in the top 2 among all the branches. If the sect master is included, we can be compared with the other 2 branches. When Zhao Lu said this, the confusion that had arisen in Duan Lingtian's heart was resolved. From the looks of it, apart from the Ba Dao lineage, the other lineage that had 3 emperor gods wasn't from the Yun Peak lineage. Instead, there were other branches. Under such circumstances, if Old Ancestor dares to make the sect master make such a request, the decision-makers of the Tyrant Saber clan and the Hidden Sword clan will definitely not agree. If the sect master insists on doing it, the Old Ancestors of the Tyrant Saber clan and the Hidden Sword clan might stand out and stop him. By then, it would be useless even if the Old Ancestors come out because the other party has 2 Old Ancestors. Moreover, not only the Old Ancestors of the Tyrant Saber clan and the Hidden Sword clan, but also the Old Ancestors of the other 4 branches that have Void Pierce stage elders. If the 6 Old Ancestors don't agree, do you think the Old Ancestors of our Cloud Peak can make the decision? In the end, Zhao Lu asked rhetorically. Duan Lingtian was speechless when he heard this. So it wasn't Elder Zhen who asked the sect master to do that? Moreover, even the sect master himself could not make the group of decision-makers agree to give such high treatment to a disciple who had just entered the sect, and had even entered the Yun Peak lineage. Elder Zhao Lu, you mean? I, Duan Lingtian, am the one who asked them to unanimously make this decision? Duan Lingtian suddenly felt a chill down his spine. As the saying goes, one would not wake up early if there was no benefit. The higher-ups of Chunyang School were actually willing to spend so many resources on him. He would not believe that they did not want anything from him. Are these people trying to dig a hole for me? Duan Lingtian's heart throbbed. In the end, he could not help but look around vigilantly and ask Zhao Lu. Elder Zhao Lu, do you know why they are willing to spend so many resources on me? I don't believe that they are doing this because they think I'm a genius. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Zhao Lu shook his head and said with a smile, Naturally, it's impossible that they're doing this because you're a genius. I'm afraid only the people from our Cloud Peak would agree to this. The people from the other progenies would never agree to this. They are doing this because you can affect the future of the Cloud Peak, Zhao Lu said. Duan Lingtian nodded. Me? Affect the future of the Cloud Peak? Duan Lingtian was stunned when he heard this. Then he smiled bitterly and said, Elder Zhao Lu, is the Cloud Peak so optimistic that I can break through and become an upper divine emperor? In Duan Lingtian's opinion, the Chunyang School did not lack intermediate divine emperors now. Perhaps, only an upper divine emperor could make the Chunyang School treat him so politely when he had just joined the Cloud Peak. Elder Zhao Lu, although I know that I will be able to step into the upper divine emperor realm sooner or later, when that time comes, I will definitely not stay in the Pure Sun sect because I have my own matters to attend to. Duan Lingtian's tone was filled with helplessness. Elder Zhao Lu, why don't you talk to the Cloud Peak and ask him to withdraw these resources? I really don't plan to stay in the Chunyang School for long. However, after hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Zhao Lu could not help but laugh. Duan Lingtian, aren't you overestimating yourself? I also admit that you might be able to break through and become an upper divine emperor in the future. But the problem is, you are only a lower divine emperor now. Even for you, a lower divine emperor, to break through and become an upper divine emperor, I'm afraid you will need a long time to accumulate. Moreover, you can't let anything happen to you halfway through. In the Chunyang school, it's not that there are no geniuses who have the potential to become upper divine emperors, but most of them died halfway and failed to become upper divine emperors. Do you think the Cloud Peak would give you so many resources when you are only a lower divine emperor, just because they think that you will become an upper divine emperor? After saying this, Zhao Lu could not help but laugh. Then why? Duan Lingtian felt that Zhao Lu's words made sense, but he was even more confused now. Because of the 7 prefectures banquet. Zhao Lu's smile suddenly disappeared, and he said solemnly, "The 7 prefectures banquet?" Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed when he heard these words. This was not the first time he had heard these words. Long Qingchong, the clan leader of the Tianlong clan, had mentioned these words before. At the same time, Long Qingchong had told him that the 7 prefectures feast was only open to young prodigies under the age of 10,000. It was a feast that was held every 10,000 years by the 7 prefectures around Tunglung province. Because of this, Long Qingchong felt that the 5 top god emperor forces in Tunglung province would definitely extend an olive branch to him after he killed the 2 medium divine emperors. They might even try to snatch him away. Later on, Long Qingchong also told him that the other 4 god emperor forces in Tunglung province had sent people who were as strong as the Tianlong clan's golden dragon elder to the Tianlong clan to look for him. However, while these people were waiting for him to come out of the emperor battle realm at the Tianlong clan, Elder Jing Su of the Chunyang school, a god emperor expert, Zhen Pingfan, had arrived and forcefully persuaded them to leave. It was Long Qingchong who had persuaded them to leave. However, Duan Lingtian felt that it was not as simple as persuasion. There had to be some coercion involved. What is the 7 prefectures feast? Duan Lingtian asked again. Although I heard the clan leader of the Tianlong clan mention it, he doesn't seem to know much about it. He only knows that it is a feast of great significance to the 5 top forces in Tunglung province, including the Chunyang school. Chapter 3951. The 7 Prefectures Grand Banquet. Zhao Lu took a deep breath when he heard Duan Lingtian's question. His eyes lit up instantly. On the surface, it's a stage for the most outstanding young prodigies of the 7 prefectures to show off their strength. However, there's an opportunity behind the scenes. An opportunity for the forces behind the top 10 in the 7 prefectures grand banquet. In that opportunity, one of the intermediate god emperors from those forces has a chance to advance to the next level and become an upper god emperor in a short period of time. Of course, it's not 100%, but it's very likely. Throughout history, at least 2 intermediate god emperors have been promoted to upper god emperors in every 7 prefectures grand banquet. In the last 7 prefectures grand banquet, the prodigy from the Heaven's Roar sect of the state of Qing made it to the top 10. Not long after, an intermediate god emperor from the Heaven's Roar sect successfully advanced to upper god emperor. Since then, the Heaven's Roar sect has been recognized as the strongest force in the state of Qing. State of Qing. This was not the first time Duan Lingtian had heard of it. It was not the first time he had heard of the Heaven's Roar sect either. Previously, when he was still in the Heavenly Dragon sect, in the Peace City of the Sovereign Battle Realm, a Celestial Emperor level force of the Qing State Prefecture had sent a Celestial Emperor expert, Elder Silver Puppet, to recruit him. At that time, Elder Silver Puppet had quarreled with an Emperor God expert from the 7 Kills Valley in Tunglung Province. The 7 Kills Valley expert had also mentioned that Puppet Villa was inferior to the Heaven's Roar sect. What kind of opportunity can allow an intermediate God Emperor to advance to upper God Emperor? Duan Lingtian asked curiously as he looked at Zhao Lu. Zhao Lu smiled bitterly and shook his head. I'm not too sure about the specifics. I'm afraid only the Emperor God experts in the sects know about this. I don't have access to that level of knowledge yet. Zhao Lu said. Duan Lingtian nodded in understanding when he heard this. If you really want to know, you can ask Senior Granduncle. Zhao Lu said. The senior granduncle he was referring to was Zhen Pingfan. It doesn't seem to be too long until the next 7 prefectures feast? Duan Lingtian asked Zhao Lu. Previously, he had heard the clan master of the Tianlong clan, Long Qingchong, mention that the next 7 manners feast wouldn't be too far away. Yes. Zhao Lu nodded. About 50 years. As for the reason why the sect is pouring resources into you now, it's because we hope that you can break through to the mid-level divine sovereign realm in these 50 years. That way, you will be able to obtain one of the top 10 rankings in the 7 prefectures grand banquet, and fight for a chance to become a void pierce stage elder of the sect. Zhao Lu said. 50 years. Duan Lingtian's eyes glinted when he heard the Pure Sun sect wanted him to become an intermediate divine emperor within 50 years. A faint smile appeared on his face. Without the help of the Chunyang school, he was not very confident that he could break through to the mid-level divine emperor realm in 50 years. Now that the Chunyang school was preparing to pour a large amount of resources into him, he couldn't help but look forward to it. With the foundation of the Chunyang school, it shouldn't be too much of a problem for him to become a medium divine emperor in 50 years, right? Elder Zhao Lu, do you know what kind of resources the sect has given me? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Although he was confident in the Chunyang school, he didn't know what kind of resources the Chunyang school was going to give him. Therefore, he was a little uncertain. Based on what I know, as Zhao Lu mentioned the resources the Chunyang school was going to give to Duan Lingtian's eyes immediately lit up. Among the resources, there were some rare divine fruits that were priceless. There were also other treasures that could be consumed directly or refined into divine pills. Duan Lingtian was confident that he could refine some of the treasures into supreme divine pills with better effects. Apart from that, the Chunyang school had also given him some imperial-grade divine pills. These were the treasures that the Chunyang school had collected over the years. Normally, even true martial disciples wouldn't have the opportunity to obtain these treasures. Now they were giving them to Duan Lingtian unconditionally. Duan Lingtian, it can be said that the sect is going all out to nurture you. If you don't break through to the intermediate divine emperor stage in 50 years, you must rank in the top 10 in the 7 mansions banquet. Even if that's not very likely. Otherwise, if these resources go to waste, Yunfeng won't blame you, but the other branches will definitely have other ideas. At that time, it won't be easy for you to leave the Chunyang school. Zhao Lu paused for a moment before he continued. Of course, when I said it won't be easy for you to leave the Chunyang school, I didn't mean that the Chunyang school wants to imprison you. It's that the other branches want you to stay in the Chunyang school for a longer period of time and contribute to the Chunyang school. It's the same as asking you to repay your debt. Now that you're wasting resources on you, you're being forced to repay the debt. Zhao Lu said. At first, Duan Lingtian was slightly taken aback when he heard Zhao Lu's words. However, when he heard Zhao Lu's words, Duan Lingtian regained his senses and smiled faintly. What? Aren't you worried? Zhao Lu asked. It's not that I'm not worried. Duan Lingtian shook his head. I can only say that I can completely understand what they're doing. If he were in Duan Lingtian's shoes, if he were to waste his resources on a stranger, and the stranger failed to live up to his expectations, and did not accomplish what he wanted him to do, under such circumstances, he would not be happy if the stranger simply patted his butt and left. Elder Zhao Lu, how much do you know about the 7 prefectures feast? Before Zhao Lu left, Duan Lingtian asked him many questions about the 7 mansion banquet. Soon after, Duan Lingtian managed to find out everything Zhao Lu knew. It was also at this time that Duan Lingtian had a more comprehensive understanding of the 7 prefectures feast. The 7 prefectures feast was jointly organized by the 7 prefectures. It was a feast for the most outstanding young prodigies in the 7 prefectures. However, only the top forces in the 7 prefectures feast would participate. For example, only the top 5 forces in Tunglung province were qualified to participate in the 7 prefectures feast. Forces like the Tianlong clan and the Heaven Illumination sect, even if they were Emperor God forces, were not qualified to participate. However, Is the 7 prefectures feast really only organized by the top forces in the 7 prefectures? Then why do the young prodigies in the top 10 forces in the 7 prefectures feast have a middle emperor god expert who has a chance of being promoted to an upper emperor god? What's the secret behind this? Duan Lingtian was very curious about this and could not help but send a message to Zhen Pingfan. However, there was no response from Zhen Pingfan. His message was like a stone sinking into the sea. It seems like Elder Zhen is cultivating or is unable to receive a message. Usually, this would mean that Zhen Pingfan had not received a message. After all, it would not take much time for him to reply to a message if he received one, unless he needed to plan the content of the message. If he did not receive a message, it must mean that Zhen Pingfan was in a state where he could not be disturbed, and there was a disk array around him to block messages. Duan Lingtian was not in a hurry, because he would have a chance to ask sooner or later. I'm really looking forward to the things that the Chunyang school gave me. Also, I can enter the Chunyang school's secret room freely? Does that mean that I can further comprehend the many laws I have mastered in there to a higher level? I'm not in a hurry. I'll wait until I break through to become a middle god emperor first. If I don't become a middle god emperor and stay in the secret room for so long, the decision-makers in the Chunyang school might not be willing. If I become a middle god emperor and stay in there until the 7 prefectures feast begins, I don't think they will say anything. Duan Lingtian was relieved when he thought of this. Also, it's not convenient to refine ultimate emperor divine pills in the Chunyang school, so I'll go out and do it. However, before that, I must guarantee that when I leave, my whereabouts will be absolutely secret. Originally, Duan Lingtian thought that since he hadn't offended anyone in the Tianlong clan, he wasn't worried about being ambushed when he went out. However, after chatting with Zhao Lu for a while, he learned that Zhao Lu didn't have much of a choice. Lan Shilin of the Righteous Faction, who was also the disciple of the Chunyang school who had captured the disciple of Senior Yi Beiyuan of the Heaven Illumination sect, and brought him back to the Chunyang school, was a vengeful person. At first, Duan Lingtian was puzzled as to why Zhao Lu understood Lan Shilin so well. Later on, Zhao Lu told him that he had been in the Righteous Light faction before. It was only then that he came to a realization. At the same time, he became more wary of Lan Shilin. Thinking back to yesterday when he had faced Lan Shilin, although Lan Shilin had been smiling all the time, he still felt very uncomfortable. Duan Lingtian, don't underestimate Lan Shilin. Although Lan Shilin only became a middle-level god emperor 100 years ago, his strength is almost on par with the best middle-level god emperors in the Chunyang school. I'm afraid he might not be weaker than you. He's also one of the young prodigies from the Chunyang school, who participated in the 7 prefectures feast. Among the young prodigies under the age of 10,000 in the Chunyang school, the highest cultivation base is currently a middle-level god emperor. If we don't count you, among the young prodigies under the age of 10,000 in the Chunyang school, Lan Shilin's strength can be ranked in the top 5. This was also Zhao Lu's warning to him. Moreover, if Lan Shilin wants to deal with you, he might not do it himself. He's the only direct descendant of the Righteous Light faction's patriarch, Lan Zhengming. You can imagine how much his great-grandfather values him. Let's not talk about others. Just Lu Hui by his side, the dignified elder Lingxiu, is like his shadow, inseparable from him. The most important thing is, Lu Hui is different from ordinary elder Lingxiu. In his eyes, the Righteous Light faction's patriarch is greater than the sky. If, and I'm saying if, one day he has to choose between the Righteous Light faction's patriarch and the Chunyang school, he will choose the Righteous Light faction's patriarch without hesitation. If the Righteous Light faction's patriarch dies, he might not even frown. Even though Zhao Lu did not mention anything else, he only spoke up to this point. However, Duan Lingtian understood the meaning behind his words. If Lan Shilin really wanted to deal with him, he did not even need to find someone else. He only needed to send Elder Lingxiu Lu Hui, who was by his side. Chapter 3952. Although he had not known Zhao Lu for long, Zhao Lu's character made him feel comfortable. In addition, Zhen Pingfan had asked Zhao Lu to take care of him when he first met him, which showed his trust in Zhao Lu. Therefore, Duan Lingtian approved of Zhao Lu from the bottom of his heart. Because of this, Zhao Lu's reminder and his own feelings made him believe that Lan Xilin was not a broad-minded person. Senior Yi. After taking a deep breath, Duan Lingtian thought of someone and immediately sent a message. Although he felt that it was unlikely that Lan Xilin would attack Yi Beiyuan and his disciple before dealing with him, he still decided to remind Yi Beiyuan. No matter what, Yi Beiyuan was his savior. He could not imagine what kind of danger he would have encountered if he had not met Yi Beiyuan when he first arrived at the plain battlefield where the mystic Handle Land was adjacent to another plane of gods. Before he met Yi Beiyuan, he was fine. Although luck played a part, the more important reason was that he did not meet many people at that time. In the plain battlefield, the closer one was to the military camp, the more people there were. There was no telling when he would meet a bloodthirsty person who would kill him with a wave of his hand. At that time, he had not even become a god. In the plain battlefield, no matter how weak they were basically existences at the godly king stage. One finger was enough to crush him to death. Little brother Duan? Yi Beiyuan quickly sent a message. Have you settled down in Chunyang School? Yi Beiyuan knew that Duan Lingtian had just arrived at Chunyang School, which was why he asked this. Yes. Duan Lingtian replied with a smile. Yes, I've settled down. You joined Yin Peak? After Yi Beiyuan asked with a smile, he added, I saw that you have a good relationship with Elder Zhen and Elder Qin. Elder Zhen even helped me because of you, so I thought it was impossible for you to join Yin Peak. In fact, Yi Beiyuan did not know much about the major branches in Chunyang School. Until this time, when his disciple was abducted by Lan Xilin, he asked many people and gained a certain understanding of the major branches of Chunyang School. At the same time, he also knew that Lan Xilin, who had kidnapped his disciple, Zhuo Zhongtang, was the crown prince of the righteous faction of Chunyang School, the only emperor god expert of the righteous light lineage, who was also the ancestor of the righteous light lineage, was his great-grandfather. At the same time, he was the only surviving descendant of the righteous light sect's grand ancestor. At that time, after finding out about Lan Xilin's background, Yi Beiyuan was almost in despair. However, for the sake of his disciples, he braced himself in the end and risked his life to go to Chunyang School. Then he was rejected and chased away by Lan Xilin. On the way out of Chunyang School, he met Duan Lingtian. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that the young man he had casually saved in the planar battlefield would actually be of such great help to him at such a time. He knew very well that if not for Duan Lingtian, his disciple Zhuo Zhongtang would have died without a doubt. That's right. Duan Lingtian smiled and said, It seems like Senior Yi is quite familiar with Chunyang School. You even know about the Yin Peak faction. Previously, in order to save my disciple, I specifically asked around. Yi Beiyuan sighed. Is he all right now? Duan Lingtian asked. He's all right, Yi Beiyuan replied. Speaking of which, it's all thanks to you, little brother Duan. The two of us, master and disciple, are truly unable to repay this great kindness. Senior Yi, you're too kind. If not for you back then, I might not have been able to walk out of the planar battlefield, Duan Lingtian said repeatedly. At the same time, without waiting for Yi Beiyuan to speak, he went straight to the point. Senior Yi, I've come to look for you this time mainly to remind you. If it's possible, it's best for you and your disciples to stay in the Heaven Illumination sect during this period of time. Don't go out easily. This time, Yi Beiyuan was silent for a while before he spoke again. Are you worried that Lan Xilin of the Righteous Light sect from Chunyang School will cause trouble for us? Yes, Duan Lingtian replied. That Lan Xilin. I've only just heard that he's a vengeful person. I'm worried that if he lets you guys go in front of Elder Zhen, he'll feel indignant and cause trouble for you guys afterward. Alright, I'll be careful. Hearing this, Yi Beiyuan's expression became slightly solemn. In fact, when his disciple was in trouble earlier, he had already heard that the crown prince of the Righteous Light sect, Lan Xilin, of the Chunyang School was a vengeful person. Originally, after Chunyang School's elder Jing Su stepped forward to help him, he felt that Lan Xilin would not dare to take the risk of offending Elder Jing Su and make a move on him. However, Now that Duan Lingtian had reminded him, he felt that if Lan Xilin really wanted to deal with him and his disciples, he could have done so without alerting Elder Jingsu. Little brother Duan, thank you for the reminder, Yi Beiyuan said solemnly. If it were not for Duan Lingtian's reminder, he would not have cared too much about this. You're too kind, Senior Yi. Duan Lingtian said. Little brother Duan. Just when Duan Lingtian thought that the communication between him and Yi Beiyuan was about to end, Yi Beiyuan suddenly called out to him. After I returned to the Heaven Illumination sect, I heard that there's a genius divine emperor in the Tianlong clan. He's not even 3,000 years old, but he's already a lesser divine emperor. Moreover, he has the same name as you. In fact, Yi Beiyuan had just returned from the realm battlefield not long ago, so he was not very clear about what had happened recently. Moreover, as soon as he came out, he found out that his disciple had gotten into big trouble. Naturally, he was not in the mood to care about other things. Later on, when he heard from his disciple that the genius of the Tianlong clan was Duan Lingtian, he wondered if it was the same person. It's me. Duan Lingtian heard Yi Beiyuan's question and answered directly. It's really you. Yi Beiyuan was shocked. Although he was mentally prepared, he was still shocked. The last time he met Duan Lingtian at the Chunyang school, he knew that Duan Lingtian was a divine emperor. At that time, he was shocked for a long time. After all, when he met Duan Lingtian in the realm battlefield, Duan Lingtian was just a demigod. However, although he knew that Duan Lingtian was a lesser divine emperor, he did not expect him to be such a terrifying lesser divine emperor. He had killed 2 medium divine emperors in the Tianlong clan. Yi Beiyuan was stunned for a long time. He did not even remember how he ended the communication with Duan Lingtian. He was in a daze. From a demigod to a lesser divine emperor in less than 100 years? Has there ever been such a person in the history of the various realms of gods? Yi Beiyuan's heart trembled. He could not calm down for a long time. A lesser divine emperor less than 3,000 years old? Is he really 3,000 years old? Thinking of Duan Lingtian's cultivation progress in the past few decades, Yi Beiyuan could not help but suspect that Duan Lingtian's age might not be real. He might be even younger. After all, there is a divine pill that can hide one's bone age. Outside the Chunyang school's encampment, in a spacious area, in the void, 2 beautiful figures stood there, one in front and one behind. If one looked carefully, one would see that not far behind them in the sky, there was a tall and sturdy figure standing there, looking left and right from time to time. This was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance. He even looked a little honest. However, he gave off the feeling of an iron tower, as if he was unshakable. In front of him, there were 2 beautiful figures, one in front and one behind. The person in front was a young girl. The person behind her was a beautiful woman. At this time, the young girl was looking in the direction of the Chunyang school reluctantly. Young miss, we should go. The beautiful woman said softly to the young girl. Aunt Xian, I want to see where my brother is now. As the young girl spoke, she approached the encampment of the Chunyang school. Young miss, we can't go any further. The people of the Chunyang school will find out. Seeing this, the beautiful woman frowned slightly, but she still followed her. Almost as soon as the beautiful woman finished speaking, a powerful aura swept out from the encampment of the Chunyang school. A moment later, a figure seemed to appear from the void in the distance, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of the young girl and the beautiful woman. Who are you? Why are you spying on the Chunyang school? The person who came was an old man with an identity token of Elder Lingshu hanging from his waist. He was frowning and staring at the 2 girls in front of him. At the same time, he extended his divine sense and directly scanned the 2 girls. However, just as his divine sense was about to touch the 2 girls, before it could touch them, it directly collapsed, as if it was crushed by an invisible force. How dare you? A booming voice could be heard all of a sudden, like a clap of thunder. The next moment, the burly middle-aged man standing in the void behind them flashed, and appeared in front of the young girl like a ghost, protecting her behind him. An emperor god. The face of Elder Lingshu of the Chunyang school, whose divine sense had been shattered, instantly turned pale. When he looked at the middle-aged man again, his face was full of fear. There was a sincere fear in his eyes. He was just a high-level divine emperor. An emperor god could kill him like a dog. Without any hesitation, Elder Lingxiu immediately sent a message back to the Chunyang school, directly to the person in charge of patrolling the sect among the decision-makers of the Chunyang school, an Elder Jingxiu of the Chunyang school. An emperor god is spying on the Chunyang school outside? And this Elder Jingxiu, after receiving the message, immediately flew out of the encampment of the Chunyang school. In just 2 breaths, he had already appeared outside the encampment of the Chunyang school. Greetings, Uncle Master. As soon as this Elder Jingxiu appeared, Elder Lingxiu hurriedly bowed to salute. Elder Jingxiu nodded slightly, then looked directly at the burly middle-aged man standing in the void not far away. He frowned slightly and said, "Your Excellency, what do you want to do by spying on the Chunyang school?" He also heard what had happened just now from Elder Lingxiu. In general, Elder Lingxiu's divine sense exploration was a little presumptuous. The other 3 people just appeared outside the encampment of the Chunyang school, looking in the direction of the encampment of the Chunyang school. And in fact, they could not see anything. Their divine senses did not extend over there. Because of this, he was more polite now. "What? You Chunyang school people are so overbearing that you don't allow others to breathe here?" The beautiful woman stepped forward and said indifferently. Chapter 3953. Breathe. When Elder Jingxiu heard the beautiful woman's words, he was stunned at first, and then shook his head. "Miss, if you were me and stood in my position, would you believe what you said?" The beautiful woman heard this and said lightly, "In short, we don't intend to enter the Chunyang school's encampment area, nor do we intend to do anything to the Chunyang school. Moreover, is your Chunyang school afraid of us 3? As she spoke, there was a hint of sarcasm in the beautiful woman's tone. Elder Jingxiu glanced deeply at the beautiful woman when he heard this, and then he glanced fearfully at the robust middle-aged man who was staring at him with an indifferent expression. He felt threatened by the robust middle-aged man. The other party stared at him, giving him a feeling of being stared at by a beast. It seemed that as long as he dared to make the first move, this beast would rush up and tear him apart without hesitation. "Elder." At this time, the girl who had been silent spoke. When she moved out, the burly middle-aged man also flashed behind her, guarding her like a guard. The beautiful woman also came behind the girl at this time, and stood side by side with the burly middle-aged man. Of course, instead of standing side by side, it was better to say that her head and the burly middle-aged man's shoulder were standing side by side. At this time, the 2 elders of the Chunyang school naturally saw that the girl was the leader of the 3 people in front of them. "We have no malice toward the Chunyang school." The girl's voice was soft, like a spring breeze. "If we have disturbed you before, I would like to apologize to you. We'll leave now." As her voice fell, the girl glanced reluctantly in the direction of the Chunyang school's encampment behind the 2 elders of the Chunyang school, sighed softly, and immediately turned to leave. The burly middle-aged man and the beautiful woman also left. The burly middle-aged man was the last to follow. Before he followed, he glanced at Elder Jingxiu of the Chunyang school. Although his eyes were calm, they made Elder Jingxiu feel a certain amount of pressure. This person is definitely not an ordinary inferior divine emperor. His heart trembled. He might not even be a lower god emperor. In the entire Chunyang school, he had only felt this kind of feeling from a few god emperors, and a lower god emperor from Chunyang school. The lower god emperor of their Chunyang school was the publicly acknowledged number 1 person below the middle god emperor, the son of the Yunfeng bloodline's ancestor, Zhen Pingfan. After watching the 3 people leave, Elder Lingxiu couldn't help but look at Elder Jingxiu and ask, "Granduncle, who do you think they are?" "That girl seems to be staring in the direction of our Chunyang school. I noticed her a long time ago. If she hadn't approached our Chunyang school, I wouldn't have shown up to intercept and warn her." When Elder Lingxiu reached the end of his sentence, he paused for a moment before continuing with a bitter smile. "I originally intended to use my divine consciousness to investigate the young lady and the beautiful lady behind her. I never expected that divine emperor expert to make a move and directly destroy my divine consciousness." Hearing Elder Lingxiu's words, Elder Jingshu shook her head gently. I don't know either. However, at least I can be sure that they don't have any malicious intentions. Well, you continue patrolling. I'll go back first. As soon as she finished speaking, Elder Jingshu left. On the other side, not long after the young lady left Chunyang School with the beautiful lady and the burly middle-aged man, the young lady looked at the beautiful lady and said, Aunt Xian, I don't want to fly anymore. Take out the spaceship. Yes, Mississippi. Hearing this, the beautiful lady looked at the young lady with a doting smile, and then took out a spaceship. After boarding the spaceship, the young lady and the beautiful lady sat cross-legged on the side, while the burly middle-aged man stood near the bow of the spaceship and scanned the surroundings vigilantly. Miss, you don't have to worry. The beautiful lady smiled bitterly and said, Young Master Ling Tian will be fine. I know. The young lady nodded gently. I just miss my brother. However, my brother has gone to Chunyang School now. It won't be long before I can see him again. Now he doesn't know me. The next time we meet, he will definitely know me. As the young lady spoke, a smile finally appeared on her face. That's natural. The beautiful lady nodded. I'm really looking forward to it. The young lady's eyes were filled with strong anticipation. At that time, my brother will no longer look at me like I'm a stranger. Chunyang School, Zhengming Island. The news about Duan Lingtian successfully passing the true martial disciple assessment and becoming a new true martial disciple, as well as receiving preferential treatment from the sect and being given a lot of resources, spread throughout Chunyang School and also to Zhengming Island. That Duan Lingtian has just entered the sect and received so many resources that I've been dreaming of. After Lan Shilin heard the news, his face instantly turned gloomy, and his eyes were filled with intense jealousy. I'm going to find my great-grandfather. Taking a deep breath, Lan Shilin suppressed the flames of jealousy in his heart with great difficulty. Then he flew out and headed toward his great-grandfather, who was also the patriarch of the righteous lineage, where he cultivated. Behind him, Elder Lingshu Lu Hui shook his head somewhat helplessly. However, he did not say much and silently followed behind Lan Shilin. If he had followed Lan Shilin in the beginning, he would have said a few words to Lan Shilin and analyzed this matter for him. However, now that he had followed Lan Shilin for many years, he knew what kind of temper Lan Shilin had. Apart from the Grandmaster, he would not listen to anyone else. Not long after, Lu Hui followed Lan Shilin to meet the patriarch of the righteous lineage, Lan Zhengming. Lan Zhengming did not look like an old man. He had the appearance of a middle-aged man. He had a medium build and wore a light blue robe. He was handsome and had a long beard on his chin. He looked like a handsome middle-aged man. Grandmaster. Lu Hui took the lead and bowed respectfully to Lan Zhengming. Lan Zhengming nodded and smiled at Lu Hui. Lu Hui, has your cultivation been going well recently? It's been going well. Lu Hui responded respectfully. Lan Zhengming nodded. This kid Shilin has troubled you. Grandmaster, it's what I should do. Lu Hui hurriedly said. Lan Zhengming nodded again. At the same time, he looked at Lan Shilin with a smile on his face. Shilin, you came to see your great-grandfather in such a hurry. Did something happen? Great-grandfather. Lan Shilin was still suppressing his emotions at first. Now that he heard Lan Zhengming's words, he immediately exploded. Why? That Duan Lingtian has just entered the sect. What right does he have to receive the sect's resources? If those resources were given to me, I would have the confidence to raise my strength to the next level before the 7 prefectures banquet. Lan Shilin said in a low voice. I heard that this decision was unanimously passed by the decision-makers in a meeting. Even our righteous lineage's Grandmaster and Grandmaster in the decision-makers have agreed to this decision. Why? The current Lan Shilin was completely consumed by his jealousy. His expression was gloomy and ugly. However, in the face of Lan Shilin's loss of composure, Lan Zhengming remained indifferent. He maintained a faint smile on his face until Lan Shilin stopped talking. Then he slowly asked, Are you done? Great-grandfather, don't you think it's unfair? Lan Shilin asked with a frown. Now he could see that his great-grandfather obviously knew about this matter. However, he did not seem to find it inappropriate at all. What about his great-grandfather, who doted on him the most? Unfair? How is it unfair? Lan Jingming still had a faint smile on his face. He looked at Lan Xilin with interest and asked. Lan Xilin was already in a bad mood when he saw that his great-grandfather did not stand up for him. Now that he heard this, he was instantly furious. He's just a newcomer. What right does he have to receive such treatment? He's a lower divine emperor. I'm also a lower divine emperor. He's a true martial disciple. I'm also a true martial disciple. Why? Lan Xilin asked in a deep voice. Lan Jingming, on the other hand, was not angered by Lan Xilin's overbearing attitude. Instead, he calmly said, Duan Ling Tian, less than 3,000 years old, from a Devata realm. The first time he appeared was in the mountains east of the East Ridge Prefecture. After that, he went to Heavenly Wind City several times and entered the Hidden Fog Academy under the Hidden Fog sect, a divine emperor level sect under the Tianlong clan. At that time, he was not even a god king. Now it's less than 100 years since he became a god king. In less than 100 years, from a god to a lower divine emperor, do you think you can do it? Lan Jingming looked at Lan Xilin and asked with a smile. Less than 100 years? Lan Xilin's expression changed when he heard Lan Jingming's words. How's that possible? Even the prodigies of those powerful godly venerable level sects wouldn't have such a cultivation speed. Duan Lingtian is just a nobody from a Devata realm. How could he do that? Moreover, he's almost 3,000 years old now. In other words, he was just an ordinary god 100 years ago. Even if he obtained the inheritance of a supreme powerhouse, it's impossible for him to improve so much in such a short time, right? Lan Jingming nodded in relief when he heard Lan Xilin's words. At least his great-grandson was not blinded by jealousy. He was still rational. Of course, it's impossible for him to obtain the inheritance of a supreme powerhouse. Lan Jingming smiled faintly. Even the prodigies of those godly venerable level sects can improve so much because their parents are godly venerable level powerhouses. Their bloodline is powerful and their innate talent is great. As for Duan Lingtian, he's from a Devata realm. Moreover, he doesn't have the bloodline of a native of a realm of gods. Even if he obtained the inheritance of a supreme powerhouse, it's impossible for him to improve so much. Unless it's an ultimate powerhouse who's good at alchemy and whose alchemy skills have reached a certain level and left him with a large number of ultimate divine pills, it's impossible for him to improve so quickly. Of course, the prerequisite is that his talent is not weak. Chapter 3954. The inheritance left behind by a supreme powerhouse who specializes in pill refinement. Upon hearing Lan Jingming's words, Lan Xilin's eyes widened. Greed gleamed in his eyes as he asked, Great-grandfather, do you mean Duan Lingtian obtained the inheritance left behind by a supreme powerhouse who specializes in pill refinement? It's just a possibility. Lan Jingming smiled faintly. Apart from that, there are other possibilities. It's just that I can't think of any. The world is so big. There are many things that I don't know about. Duan Lingtian was able to achieve such a shocking feat in just 100 years. This means he's a person with great luck. At the same time, his innate talent and comprehension are not weak. Putting everything else aside, just the energy of the law that he has mastered is stronger than yours. When Lan Jingming reached the end of his sentence, he looked deeply at Lan Xilin and said, Not only is his cultivation base comparable to yours, but the energy of the law that he has mastered is also stronger than yours. Although you're already a medium divine emperor, if you really fight him, you might not be able to defeat him. Upon hearing Lan Jingming's words, Lan Xilin was displeased. Great-grandfather, you're underestimating me. Although I've just become a medium divine emperor not long ago, I think my strength is much stronger than ordinary medium divine emperors. It's easy for me to kill 1 or 2 ordinary medium divine emperors. I've seen the scryer recordings of Duan Lingtian killing 2 medium divine emperors in the Tianlong clan. If it were me, I could also kill those 2 people. Based on Lan Xilin's words, it was clear he was confident in his strength. I believe you. Lan Jingming nodded. However, ask yourself, if it were you, would you be able to do it as cleanly as him? Although Duan Lingtian is young, I can see the shadow of an old monster who has lived for tens of thousands of years from his attacks. He must have been a veteran when he was in the Devata realm. Lan Jingming's words seemed to confirm this. Great-grandfather, it seems like we're going off topic. Lan Shilin frowned. How could he not see through his great-grandfather's words? It was just that he was unwilling to admit that he was inferior to Duan Lingtian, who was not even 3,000 years old. Otherwise, wouldn't he have lived a few thousand years longer than others? Not really. Lan Jingming smiled faintly. You came to me because you feel that Duan Lingtian took the sect's resources and felt that it was unfair. I'm saying this mainly because I want you to see Duan Lingtian clearly, and at the same time, recognize yourself clearly. But now, it seems that you still haven't seen it clearly, or perhaps you're unwilling to see it clearly. Celine, sometimes being able to see through others and recognize yourself is a good thing, not a bad thing. Don't ruin yourself because of that laughable bit of pride. This time, Lan Jingming's gaze sharpened as he spoke, and his tone became more solemn in an instant. When Lan Shilin heard this, he was no longer as overbearing as before. His entire being seemed to have become much more obedient in an instant. Yes, great-grandfather. Seeing Lan Shilin's reaction, Lan Jingming sighed and said, This time, your few martial granduncles and martial granduncles who are in the decision-making level have sent me a message to discuss the matter of the sect spending a huge amount of resources on Duan Lingtian. My opinion is to agree. Why? Lan Shilin had just found out about this matter and asked instinctively. However, he still suppressed his voice and did not overreact. It's an irresistible trend. In an instant, Lan Jingming's eyes became deep and profound. It's because the 7 branches that have void-pierced stage-old ancestors, including the Cloud Peak, will support this decision. Under such circumstances, the other branches can only go with the flow. If anyone rejects this decision, they might be seen as not thinking for the sect. That person's intentions are punishable. When Lan Shilin spoke up to this point, he saw Lan Jingming opening his mouth as though he wanted to say something. However, Lan Jingming did not allow him to speak as he continued. The innate talent and comprehension ability that Duan Lingtian displayed was too shocking. Therefore, they've completely placed their hopes on Duan Lingtian in the 7 Mansions banquet 50 years later. You should also know that, including you, even the few true martial disciples who are stronger than you have a slim chance of getting into the top 10 of the 7 prefectures grand banquet. However, Duan Lingtian has a slim chance. And this slim chance depends on whether he can reach the middle divine emperor realm within 50 years. Judging from his combat power as a low divine emperor, if he reaches the middle divine emperor realm, he will definitely get into the top 10 of the 7 prefectures grand banquet. Lan Jingming's gaze towards Lan Shilin was filled with affection. Lan Shilin, ask yourself, when you were a low divine emperor, could you withstand a full-powered attack from him? As soon as Lan Jingming said this, Lan Shilin became silent. After a while he said, Great-grandfather, Lan Shilin understands. Lan Shilin didn't consider this matter thoroughly, and was blinded by jealousy. The current Lan Shilin looked like he was admitting his mistake. Lan Jingming shook his head and sighed. It's also because I spoiled you too much. Otherwise you wouldn't feel wronged because of this matter. When Lan Shilin lowered his head after hearing this, Lan Jingming continued, I also heard that Duan Lingtian went to look for you with my junior brother Jin when he just arrived at Chunyang School. I hope that this matter will end here. Whether it's Duan Lingtian or the 2 from the Heaven Illumination sect, you shouldn't act rashly. At this point, Lan Jingming looked at Lu Hui who was standing at the side and said, Lu Hui, if he asks you to deal with Duan Lingtian and the 2 from the Heaven Illumination sect, reject him directly and inform me through a message. Yes, Grandmaster. Lu Hui hurriedly responded. At the same time, a bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He knew that from today onwards, he could no longer blindly listen to Lan Shilin on some matters. Great-grandfather, are you afraid of Duan Lingtian? At this moment, Lan Shilin's arrogance seemed to have returned. He had accepted that Duan Lingtian had obtained those resources. But now his great-grandfather actually asked him not to take revenge on Duan Lingtian and the 2 from the Heaven Illumination sect? I'm not afraid. Lan Jingming shook his head. It's a question of whether it's worth it or not. Now that Duan Ling Tian has high hopes placed on him by the sect will definitely not allow anything to happen to him before the 7-mansion banquet. If you make a move on him at this time, no matter if you succeed or fail, as long as there are traces left behind and you didn't do a clean job, the sect won't let you go. By that time, the few Void Pierce stage elders might want you dead. Do you think that your great-grandfather, a clear Void stage elder, can save you at that time? As soon as Lan Jingming said that, Lan Xilin immediately fell silent. Also, Lan Jingming continued, for people like Duan Lingtian, regardless of whether he obtained the inheritance of a supreme expert or had other heaven-shaking fortuitous encounters, all in all, he is a person with great luck. This kind of person, unless you can be sure that you will destroy him. Otherwise, as long as he has the slightest chance of survival and escapes from your hands, what awaits you will be his revenge after he rises to power. Lan Xilin, listen to your great-grandfather's advice. There is actually no conflict between you and him. There is no need to ruin yourself just because of a moment of anger. As Lan Jingming spoke, his expression became more and more serious. Yes, great-grandfather. Although Lan Xilin was still a little unconvinced in his heart, he hurriedly agreed because he could see that this great-grandfather of his was serious now. This great-grandfather of his usually spoke to him softly. It was rare for him to be so serious. If you can let it go, having one more friend like him is better than having one more enemy like him. When Lan Jingming said that, the gaze he used to look at Lan Xilin became much sharper, as if he could see through Lan Xilin's heart. Don't try to seize his fortune and luck. Some things are suitable for him, but not necessarily for you. Even if he has treasures in his hands, you won't be able to get anything even if you kill him after he destroys his own storage ring. Besides, you can't be sure if he has the confidence to do so. Don't think about taking such a risk. For Duan Lingtian, his days at Chunyang School were definitely the most relaxed and comfortable since he came to the mystic Handle Land in the Plains of Gods. Other than the large amount of resources that Chunyang School gave him, the son of the Yun Peak's ancestor, Jingshu Elder Zhen Pingfan, also told him that he could tell him if he needed anything. He said that if his father received him, the Yun Peak would do their best to satisfy his needs. Under such circumstances, no matter what Duan Lingtian wanted, the Yun Peak would cooperate and give it to him, unless it was something that the Yun Peak's bloodline could not obtain. In addition, if Duan Lingtian wanted to go out to refine pills, Zhen Pingfan would personally accompany him. Zhen Pingfan did not barge in to refine pills. Therefore, even if Duan Lingtian had tampered with the pill tribulation caused by refining 2 Pinnacle King-level divine pills at the same time to cover up the pill tribulation caused by refining 1 Pinnacle King-level divine pill, he would not discover anything. Just like that, the days passed. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian's cultivation base continued to improve. Duan Lingtian. One day, Duan Lingtian received a message from Qin Wuyang. The divine artifact master from Yin Peak that I mentioned to you earlier has returned. The materials required to refine the space-piercing divine shuttle have been prepared. I'll ask him to refine the space-piercing divine shuttle for you now. I've asked him, and he'll give you 3 space-piercing divine shuttles within a month. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up when he heard Qin Wuyang's message. He could finally return to the Devata realms and the mundane realms. Naturally, it was his clone that returned. Although his clone could return to the mystic Handle Land through the space-piercing divine shuttle, it might not necessarily return to the mystic Handle Land. There were more than a dozen realms of gods. The probability of him returning to the mystic Handle Land was not high. Moreover, he did not want to take the risk. Most importantly, it was enough for his clone to return. Chapter 3955. With the godly space-piercing shuttle at hand, Duan Lingtian thought of his master, Feng Qingyang. I wonder if master has managed to free himself from Mi Xian. If he has, he should have returned to solitary destructive heaven by now. If he hasn't, I'm sure he hasn't returned. Duan Lingtian's heart sank when he thought of this. At this moment, the soul pearl in his hand that belonged to his master, Feng Qingyang, had completely dissipated. Due to this reason, he could not confirm whether his master was still alive or not. Master will definitely be fine. However, if master still hasn't returned and his soul is still suppressed by Mixian and his body is still occupied, I'll have to make a trip to the netherworld. The moment Duanling Tian thought of this, he frowned. However, even if I enter the netherworld and look for master, it won't be easy for me to force Mixian's soul out. For a moment, Duanling Tian's face was filled with worry. However, he soon thought of something and his eyes narrowed. How could I have forgotten about Elder Zhen? He's the quiet void elder of Chunyang School and an emperor god expert. He must be more knowledgeable than I am. He might have a way. When he thought of Zhen Pingfan, Duanling Tian could no longer suppress the restlessness in his heart. He left his residence and went to Zhen Pingfan's residence. He had found out about Zhen Pingfan's cultivation place some time ago, and had been there several times. Elder Zhen. However, when he arrived outside Zhen Pingfan's cultivation place, Duanling Tian still sent him a message to greet him. Otherwise, the formation that enveloped Zhen Pingfan's cultivation place would prevent him from entering. Duanling Tian? When he received Duanling Tian's message and heard the urgency in Duanling Tian's voice, Zhen Pingfan could not help but ask, "What's wrong? What's the matter?" "Elder Zhen, I have an urgent matter to discuss with you. I'm outside your cultivation area right now," Duanling Tian said. Almost as soon as Duanling Tian finished speaking, a ripple suddenly appeared in the air above the mansion located in a valley in front of him. Then the scene inside changed quite a bit. Then, a figure shot out like a ghost and arrived in front of Duanling Tian in the blink of an eye. "What? Did someone bully you in Chunyang School? Don't worry. As long as you're in the right, I Zhen Pingfan will let him know the consequences of bullying me. Zhen Pingfan." As Zhen Pingfan finished speaking, an ominous glint flashed in his eyes. His aura also underwent a great change in an instant. The originally peaceful aura became incomparably violent in the blink of an eye. Upon hearing Zhen Pingfan's words, Duanling Tian knew Zhen Pingfan had misunderstood him. He smiled wryly and said, "Elder Zhen, no one bullied me. I'm looking for you because I have some private matters to discuss with you." Upon hearing this, Zhen Pingfan's violent aura disappeared, and he became as gentle as before. "I see. What is it?" Zhen Pingfan asked curiously. "Something happened to my master in a Devata realm." Duanling Tian did not beat around the bush. He directly told Zhen Pingfan about his master, Feng Qingyang, and the origin of Mixian, who had taken over his master's body. Zhen Pingfan's eyes lit up when he heard Duanling Tian mention that Mixian was from the Dead Spirit clan. At the same time, he was hesitant to speak. However, he did not interrupt Duanling Tian in the end. Only after Duanling Tian had finished speaking did he ask in an urgent tone, "Are you sure the spirit life form you mentioned is a member of the Spectre clan from the Netherworld? Moreover, he's a divine emperor from the Dead Spirit clan?" Zhen Pingfan's eyes shone brightly when he spoke. However, this caused Duanling Tian to be puzzled. He did not know why Elder Zhen would suddenly become so agitated. However, he still nodded affirmatively. "I can confirm this. That person from the Dead Soul race once attacked me when he was still a God King. I heard him say with my own ears that he destroyed the Dead Spirit clan and devoured all of them. That's how he could reach the godly emperor realm," Duanling Tian said. "You said he tried to possess someone else's body, but you destroyed his body and his soul escaped?" Zhen Pingfan asked again. "Yes." Duanling Tian nodded. He was very sure of this. It seems that because of this, he used up the one and only chance of perfect possession in the Dead Spirit clan. As a result, although he possessed someone else's body, he was unable to use his full strength and was greatly restricted. My master was only a higher God King, and he was unable to kill him. Duanling Tian, you've given Chunyang School a great gift this time," Zhen Pingfan said with a grin. Duanling Tian was stunned. He did not understand what Zhen Pingfan meant. "Elder Zhen, I don't understand what you mean. You'll understand soon. As long as you can find that person from the Dead Spirit clan," Zhen Pingfan said. Duanling Tian was even more confused now. Little fan. Just as Duan Lingtian was at a loss, an old but powerful voice rang in his ears. At the same time, it also reached Zhen Pingfan's ears. I've already informed your martial uncle Yi. Now bring Duan Lingtian with you. As soon as Duan Lingtian regained his senses, Zhen Pingfan looked at him and said with a smile, Duan Lingtian, my father asked me to bring you over. It just so happens that you haven't met my father yet. Let's meet him together this time. Today, I'll bring you to meet 2 void-pierced stage elders. As soon as Zhen Pingfan said that, Duan Lingtian was unsurprisingly shocked. Just now, when he heard how that voice addressed Zhen Pingfan, he had already vaguely guessed that the other party should be the void-pierced stage old ancestor of Yin Feng's lineage whom he had yet to meet. And according to what the other party said, he would be able to meet him later. And now, according to what Zhen Pingfan said, he would actually be able to meet another void-pierced stage elder later? Is it the martial uncle Yi of Elder Zhen Pingfan, whom Elder Zhen Yunfeng mentioned just now? Just as he thought of that, Duan Lingtian sensed an invisible force assaulting his body. In the blink of an eye, it brought him along with the wind. It was none other than Zhen Pingfan who personally brought him to meet the old ancestor of Yin Feng's lineage after seeing him in a daze. Elder Zhen, the person whom Elder Zhen Yunfeng mentioned just now. Could it be the one from the hidden sword lineage? On the way, Duan Lingtian finally regained his senses and asked curiously at the same time. Among all the void-pierced stage elders in our Chunyang school, he's the only one with the surname Yi. Zhen Pingfan nodded in response. After receiving confirmation, even though Duan Lingtian thought that he was a calm person, his heart could not help but palpitate a little at this moment. Void-pierced stage elders were the existences with the highest status in Chunyang school. In the entire Chunyang school, there were only 7 of them on the surface. As for whether there were more in secret, Duan Lingtian did not know. However, even if there were more in secret, Duan Lingtian felt that there would not be many of them. Later, he would meet the 2 void-pierced stage elders of Chunyang school in one go. We're here. As Zhen Pingfan brought him to a stop, Duan Lingtian discovered that they had arrived at the depths of Yinfeng Island where Yin Feng's lineage was located. It was inside a huge canyon. The canyon was very big. It was filled with greenery everywhere. The chirping of birds and the fragrance of flowers were everywhere. There was also smoke rising in spirals from kitchen chimneys. It was like a paradise. Duan Lingtian followed Zhen Pingfan and went deep into the canyon, startling a flock of birds. After a while, Duan Lingtian followed Zhen Pingfan and landed on a spacious stone platform in the canyon. On top of the stone platform, there was a spacious mansion. At this moment, there were 2 figures standing in the air above the mansion. One was an old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion. The other was a handsome young man with straight eyebrows. The old man was wearing a grayish-white long robe. There were several complicated patterns embroidered on the robe. At least, Duan Lingtian could not tell what those patterns were and what they symbolized. As for the young man, he was wearing a light golden long robe. Every corner of the long robe was embroidered with silver edges. There were also swords embroidered on the silver edges. At first glance, the 2 of them looked like 2 extremes. Father. After Zhen Pingfan brought Duan Lingtian closer, he first bowed respectfully to the old man. Then he looked at the young man beside the old man and bowed respectfully. Greetings, martial uncle Yi. Just a moment ago, Duan Lingtian had already guessed who the 2 of them were. The old man was undoubtedly the old ancestor of the Yin Peak clan, the void-pierced stage elder, Shen Yunfeng. The young man was the old ancestor of the Hidden Sword clan, the void-pierced stage elder, Yi Chenfeng. At this moment, Duan Lingtian realized that the 2 void-pierced stage elders in front of him did not pay much attention to Zhen Pingfan when he bowed. Instead, their gazes fell on him. Greetings, Elder Zhen and Elder Yi. Duan Lingtian followed behind Zhen Pingfan and bowed slightly to the 2 elders. Duan Lingtian. As Yi Chenfeng spoke, Duan Lingtian felt as if there were 10,000 swords in front of him. They were incomparably sharp. However, just as his expression changed and he was about to raise his hand to defend himself, that awe-inspiring sword intent vanished in an instant. However, Yi Chenfeng had already arrived in front of him at this moment. A pair of glittering eyes looked straight into his eyes. Duan Lingtian, are you sure that this is a Divine Emperor Realm Ghost clan member of the Dead Spirit clan who used his one and only chance of perfect possession in his life? Duan Lingtian did not expect Yi Qinfeng to suddenly come close to him. He also did not expect that he would ask such a question. However, now he finally understood why the old ancestor of the Yun Peak clan, Zhen Yunfeng, suddenly wanted to see him and why the old ancestor of the Hidden Sword clan, Yi Qinfeng, would appear here. It turned out that it was all because of the words he said to Zhen Pingfan before. Elder Yi, I can be sure of this. Duan Lingtian nodded with great certainty. It's not the first time I've dealt with him. However, Elder Yi, he is just a Divine Emperor Realm Ghost clan member of the Dead Spirit clan. Is he worthy of your attention? In Duan Lingtian's opinion, that Dead Spirit clan member was just a spiritual life form. In terms of combat power, he was not a match for ordinary mid-level Divine Emperors. Yet, it was this spiritual life form that alarmed 2 Void Pierce stage elders and 2 God Emperors of the Chunyang school. Moreover, they were 2 mid-level God Emperors. Chapter 3956. Duan Lingtian asked Zhen Pingfan, the old ancestor of the Hidden Sword progeny and the Void Pierce stage elder, in disbelief. Duan Lingtian, you've given Chunyang school a great gift. From the looks of it, Zhen Yunfeng's request to see him and Yi Qinfeng's appearance were most likely related to Zhen Pingfan's words. Mi Xian is a great gift to Chunyang school? Duan Lingtian was even more confused now. Mi Xian was just the soul of a medium Divine Emperor. What was the use of Mi Xian to Chunyang school? If he were in the Devata realms, he could understand. After all, many souls in the netherworld could be enslaved and injected into prominent celestial weapons to turn them into weapon spirits. However, things like artifact spirits could not be attached to divine artifacts. The pressure of divine artifacts was enough to easily crush them. Divine artifacts usually had their own artifact souls. At this moment, Duan Lingtian confirmed Mi Xian's words. A hint of excitement could be seen in Yi Qinfeng's eyes. At the same time, his voice became gentler as he said, Duan Lingtian, to ordinary people, a Divine Emperor from the Dead Spirit clan is nothing special. However, it's very important to the Hidden Sword progeny. The Hidden Sword progeny has a unique Divine Sword soul nourishing technique. The Divine Sword in my hand can only be considered as a half-complete sword soul. A Divine Emperor from the Dead Spirit clan is a great nourishment for it. However, it's basically impossible for a Divine Emperor from the Dead Spirit clan to appear. Moreover, even if it appears, as long as it doesn't use its once-in-a-lifetime perfect possession opportunity, it's useless to me. But if it were to use up that opportunity, I am extremely confident that it would become the best nourishment for the sword soul of my Divine Sword, allowing it to completely take form. A hint of excitement could be heard in Yi Qinfeng's voice when he reached the end of his sentence. Hearing Yi Qinfeng's words, Zhen Yunfeng and Zhen Pingfan were still calm. Obviously, they had known about this for a long time. However, when Duan Lingtian heard Yi Qinfeng's words, his pupils shrank as his heart surged. Of course, he knew what Yi Qinfeng was implying. In other words, even though the sword soul in Yi Qinfeng's divine sword had been born, it wasn't complete yet. However, once Yi Qinfeng used the unique divine sword soul nurturing art of the hidden sword lineage, and injected Mi Xian, a god emperor of the dead spirit race, into his sword soul would be complete. Once the sword spirit in Yi Qinfeng's godly sword was fully formed, it would become a top-grade godly sword on the same level as his 7 orifices exquisite sword. That was because it was a high-grade divine sword that had given birth to a complete sword soul. Moreover, the power that Yi Qinfeng could unleash was not something that his 7 orifices exquisite sword could compare with. I can't believe that the Zongjia lineage of Chunyang school has such a magical sword soul-nourishing method. Duan Lingtian's heart trembled. He couldn't calm down for a long time. This had already overturned some of his previous understandings. Nothing is too strange in this vast world. Duan Lingtian sighed inwardly. Duan Lingtian, if you help me find the dead spirit clansmen at the Divine Emperor stage, I, Yi Chenfeng, the hidden sword progeny, and the pure sun sect will owe you a favor. Yi Chenfeng added. In total, I'll owe you 3 favors. To be honest, Duan Lingtian didn't care about favors because it was his duty to get rid of Mi Xian. If Mi Xian could be of some use to Yi Chenfeng before he died, he would be more than happy to do him a favor. However, there was one thing Duan Lingtian wanted to confirm. It was a rather important thing. Elder Yi, if that dead soul clansman becomes nourishment for the sword soul of your divine sword, will his memory and consciousness still exist? Hearing this, Yi Chenfeng smiled faintly. Of course not. To put it bluntly, he's just nourishment for the sword soul of my divine sword. The sword soul of my divine sword hasn't fully developed, but it already has a basic consciousness. You don't have to worry about that. In the future, you won't have a sword soul as an enemy for no reason. Moreover, even if his consciousness is still there, as the sword soul of my divine sword, I'll still be the master. Yi Chenfeng shook his head and smiled as though he knew what Duan Lingtian was worried about. Duan Lingtian smiled awkwardly when Yi Chenfeng saw through his thoughts. Then he asked curiously, Elder Yi, do you plan to return to the Devata realm with me? Yes. Yi Chenfeng nodded. Although the spatial tunnel between the realms of gods and the lower realms has been sealed, I can still return with you through the void-piercing divine shuttle. Elder Yi. Duan Lingtian smiled wryly and said, Originally, I didn't have to worry about anything with you making a trip. However, as far as I know, the natives of the realms of gods will have their strength suppressed as soon as they leave the realms of gods, right? Duan Lingtian still remembered what his master, Feng Qingyang, had told him. Back then, the Yun clan's vile slave who chased after his master, Feng Qingyang, and forced his master, Feng Qingyang, to enter the Azura hell was unable to kill his master, Feng Qingyang, because his strength was suppressed. Otherwise, with his identity as a member of a godly venerable clan in the divine offering land, even if he was just a slave, his strength would not be weak. It was said that the realms of gods were formed from the little worlds in the bodies of supreme powerhouses. The natives of the realms of gods who carried the bloodline of a supreme powerhouse would have their strength suppressed by the law set by the supreme powerhouse when they left the realms of gods for the lower realms of gods. The law was set by the supreme powerhouses to control their little worlds at will. It was similar to the heart demon blood oath in the realms of gods. It could also be understood as a kind of seal. Those who carried the bloodline of a supreme powerhouse would be able to travel to different planes of gods. In other words, they would be able to travel to different minor worlds within the bodies of supreme powerhouses. However, if they wanted to go to the lower realms of gods, their strength would be sealed. This was a rule set by the supreme powerhouses to prevent the natives of the realms of gods from going to the lower realms of gods to cause trouble. Most of the supreme powerhouses, including the earliest group of supreme powerhouses, came from the lower realms of gods. They regarded the lower realms of gods as their hometowns. Naturally, they did not want their hometowns to be destroyed. Haha! Before Zhen Pingfan could say anything, Zhen Pingfan burst out laughing. Duan Lingtian was confused by Zhen Pingfan's laughter. He looked at Zhen Pingfan in confusion. Could he be wrong? However, he remembered that the natives of the realms of gods would have their strength suppressed when they went to the lower realms of gods. There should be no mistake. Duan Lingtian. Zhen Pingfan smiled when he saw Duan Lingtian looking at him in confusion. Don't tell me you think you're the only one who came from the Devata realm? Upon hearing Zhen Pingfan's words, Duan Lingtian looked at Zhen Pingfan in surprise. Elder Yi, why you're from the Devata realm as well? Yi Chenfeng smiled faintly. To be precise, I'm from the mundane realm. Mundane realm. Upon hearing Yi Chenfeng's words, Duan Lingtian was filled with respect. As someone who came from the mundane realm, it was not easy for him to reach where he was today. And this person in front of him, who had walked out from the mundane plane, was already an emperor god expert. Duan Lingtian, if I'm not mistaken, you're from the mundane realm as well, right? Yi Chenfeng asked with a smile. Why do you think so, Elder Yi? Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. Yi Chenfeng smiled and said, I've seen the scryer recording of you killing the 2 intermediate god emperors in the Tianlong clan. Although you didn't attack much at that time, your calmness shows that even if you're not a veteran, you're very experienced in battle. You're so experienced that even ordinary god emperors can't compare to you. That's why I'm guessing you're from the mundane realm as well. Yi Qinfeng said. Yes, I'm from the mundane realm. Duan Lingtian nodded. The Saint Realm and the Yanhuang realm are both considered my hometowns. The reason why he mentioned his hometowns was that Duan Lingtian thought that if Elder Yi was also from one of the two mundane realms, he might be able to take care of him in the future. I didn't expect you to be from the Yanhuang realm. Yi Qinfeng said in surprise. It's said that our Chunyang school's ancestor came from the Yanhuang realm. At this time, even Zhen Yunfeng and Zhen Pingfan looked at Duan Lingtian in surprise. They did not expect that Duan Lingtian and their Chunyang school's ancestor came from the same mundane realm. Our Chunyang school's ancestor is surnamed Lu? Duan Lingtian's pupil shrank slightly, and then he asked subconsciously. Yes, his surname is Lu. Yi Qinfeng nodded, and then said in surprise. Could it be that you've heard of our Chunyang school's ancestor? Duan Lingtian smiled bitterly and said. In one of my hometowns, the Yanhuang realm, there's a legendary figure there. His Taoist title is Pure Sun, and his name is Lu Dongbin. That's our ancestor. Zhen Yunfeng's eyes lit up, and then he sighed with emotion. I really didn't expect that the genius that our Chunyang school recently accepted is from our ancestors' homeworld. Moreover, it might affect the upcoming 7 prefectures banquet. Could it be that our ancestors are protecting our Pure Sun sect from the unseen world? When Zhen Yunfeng said this, even Zhen Pingfan and Yi Qinfeng's eyes lit up. During this process, the relationship between Duan Lingtian and the 2 Void Pierce stage elders of the Chunyang school became closer. After receiving confirmation, Duan Lingtian sighed with emotion. He did not expect his speculation to come true. Now that he thought about it, it seemed like many of the figures in the ancient myths and legends on Earth in his previous life were real. He had heard and seen many of them since he was in the Devata realms. After a long while, Duan Lingtian regained his senses. He looked at Yi Qinfeng and asked, Elder Yi, do you plan to send a clone with me? Or do you plan to go with me? Chapter 3957. Should he send his avatar or his true self? In Duan Lingtian's opinion, Yi Qinfeng had his reasons. If his avatar went, he would either bring his high-grade divine sword with him, and use Mi Xian to nourish the sword soul in the lower realm, or find a way to bring Mi Xian back to the Chunyang school. Regardless, his avatar would have to return to the Chunyang school. If his true self went, it would be the same. Moreover, it would be safer on the way back to the Chunyang school. As for the Chunyang school, he could leave his avatar behind. Duan Lingtian did not think too much about the difficulty of Yi Qinfeng returning to the mystic gangland, using the space-piercing divine shuttle. With Yi Qinfeng's strength, even if he went to another realm of gods using the space-piercing divine shuttle, he would still be able to return to the mystic gangland and the Chunyang school. Previously, when he was in the Linghu family, he learned from Linghu Renjia that Linghu Renfeng, the god emperor, had returned to the mystic gangland from the divine offering land through a realm battlefield. The realm battlefield in the mystic gangland was not formed by a collision with the divine offering land, so it was impossible to go from the divine offering land to the mystic gangland through the realm battlefield. However, there was a spatial connection between the realm battlefields. Space was a very mysterious thing. The various planar battlefields were actually separated by a very long distance, but there was a connection between them that was similar to teleportation. One could go through one planar battlefield and enter another planar battlefield. It was not difficult to enter the realm of gods. Any god emperor could do it. However, if one wanted to go to the other realm of gods through the realm battlefield, one would have to rely on luck. If one was unlucky, it would take a lot of effort. This was because one would only know which realm of gods it was connected to after arriving at the other realm battlefield. One would have to ask someone in the other realm battlefield to find out. Duan Lingtian only knew this from Linghu Renjia. Of course my true self will go. Facing Duan Lingtian's question, Yi Qinfeng smiled and said, sending a clone is not very safe. I am also worried. Even if I were to go, Under extremely bad luck, I would be able to make it back before the Feast of the Seven Prefectures. Yi Chenfeng said. You can't be careless. At this time, Zhen Yunfeng looked at Yi Chenfeng and said, there is no lack of upper god emperors and hierarch realm existences in the various battlefields. If you encounter them, be humble and tell them where you come from. Killing you won't give you any military merits. I'm sure they won't hold it against you. Hearing this, Yi Chenfeng could not help but smile bitterly. Senior brother Zhen, you don't need to remind me of this. I am not a child. I haven't lived long enough. Don't forget, the last tribulation thunder of my last 1,000-year heavenly tribulation was still destroyed by my sword finger. I didn't even use my divine sword. Hearing Yi Chenfeng's words, Zhen Yunfeng's face froze. Then he cursed, get lost. Stop showing off your age and strength in front of me. Zhen Pingfan, who was at the side, saw Duan Lingtian looking at his father, Zhen Yunfeng, and his martial uncle Yi Chenfeng in astonishment. He could not help but explain through telepathy with a smile. Duan Lingtian, this martial uncle Yi of mine is actually younger than me. He is also recognized as the #1 genius of the Chunyang school in the past 100,000 years. During the Feast of the Seven Prefectures, if you can fight your way into the top 10, the Chunyang school will be able to get 2 spots that have the potential to advance to the upper god emperor realm. One of the spots will be reserved for martial uncle Yi. As for the other spot, it will require the other Void Pierce stage elders to discuss and even compete for it. As soon as Zhen Pingfan said this, Duan Lingtian was naturally shocked again. This elder Yi, who came from the mundane world just like him, was actually such a genius? Since one of the 2 spots was reserved for him, it meant that the other Void Pierce stage elders did not have any objections. It was obvious that his level of genius had definitely been recognized by the other Void Pierce stage elders. Elder Yi, when do you plan to depart? Duan Lingtian looked at Yi Chenfeng and asked. I need to find 2 void-piercing divine shuttles first, Yi Chenfeng said while shaking his head. Previously, I rarely returned to the lower planes when the planar battlefield is open. Besides, I can get void-piercing divine shuttles everywhere. Therefore, I didn't store them. Otherwise, if I store more of them, I might not even need to go through the planar battlefield to come back. Duan Lingtian naturally understood the meaning of Yi Chenfeng's words. What he meant was that if he had enough void-piercing divine shuttles, he could use one to return to the lower planes, and the other to return to the planes of gods. The former and latter were both indiscriminate teleportation. Under such circumstances, if he had enough void-piercing divine shuttles, he could use the void-piercing divine shuttles to return to the lower planes after teleporting to the other planes of gods. Then he could use the void-piercing divine shuttles to return to the lower planes and teleport to the planes of gods again. This cycle would repeat endlessly. It would continue until he was lucky enough to return to the profound Handle land. After all, there were only a dozen or so planes of gods. There would always be a time when he was lucky. Of course, he needed enough void-piercing divine shuttles to do this. Elder Yi, if you don't have any void-piercing divine shuttles, I have a few for you. I'll give you one when the time comes, Duan Lingtian said to Yi Chenfeng with a smile. Although Yi Chenfeng was planning to follow him back to the lower planes to nurture the soul of his divine sword, he had to deal with Mi Xian first before he could do that. Previously, when he sent his clone back, he could not do anything to Mi Xian. However, with Yi Chenfeng, a medium god emperor, following him back, dealing with Mi Xian would be a piece of cake. I'm really curious. I wonder what Mi Xian's expression will be if he sees me bringing a god emperor to him. It will definitely be interesting. When Duan Lingtian thought of this, the corners of his mouth could not help but curl up into a faint smile. All right, Yi Chenfeng replied. At the same time, he took out a soul orb and exchanged it with Duan Lingtian. When you depart, just send me a message. Also, if you encounter any problems in the Chunyang school in the future, as long as you're not in the wrong, just let me know and I'll solve them for you. Yi Chenfeng said. If the matter has nothing to do with those old fellows, even if you're in the wrong, I can still solve it for you. Although Yi Chenfeng's words were irresponsible and did not seem to be able to distinguish right from wrong, He dared to say this mainly because he knew Duan Lingtian was not the kind of person who would make things difficult for him. Moreover, the Chunyang school had investigated Duan Lingtian, and he knew the results of the investigation. Because of this, he knew Duan Lingtian's character in the profound Handle land very well. If it were a reckless and brainless troublemaker, even if the other party could nurture his divine sword soul, he would definitely not make such a promise. Thank you, Elder Yi. Upon hearing Yi Qinfeng's words, Duan Lingtian knew he would have another backer in the Chunyang school from today onward. If you're free, you can also visit the Hidden Sword Progeny. Most of the people in the Hidden Sword Progeny are from the Devata realms. Yi Qinfeng continued to say, you're also a non-native who came to the realms of gods from a lower secondary realm. I'm sure you'll have many things to talk about. I'll definitely visit you in the future. Duan Lingtian hurriedly replied. He would definitely visit the Hidden Sword Progeny in the future. Who knew? If he went to the Hidden Sword lineage, he might be able to gain a few more backers. According to what he knew, the Hidden Sword lineage also had 2 other God Emperor powerhouses, and they were both the Pure Sun Sect's elders Jingxiu. A month later, Duan Lingtian's clone that had comprehended the law of space, and Yi Qinfeng set off at almost the same time. However, due to the fact that only one person could enter the space-piercing divine shuttle at a time, the space-piercing divine shuttle would collapse if 2 people entered the space-piercing divine shuttle at once. Their next destination was also completely different. Elder Yi, let's meet at the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Since Duan Lingtian knew they would meet at different places, he had informed Yi Qinfeng beforehand that they would meet at the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. There were only 81 Devata realms in the world. It was not difficult to find the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. It was not difficult to find the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven as well. All right. Yi Qinfeng nodded before he activated the space-piercing divine shuttle. At the same time, Duan Lingtian opened a space-piercing divine shuttle and entered the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. In just a blink of an eye, the duo disappeared from the Chunyang school's estate. Naturally, Duan Lingtian's clone that had left was only his clone. His main body remained in the Chunyang school. As for Yi Qinfeng, it was the exact opposite. His true body had left while his clone remained in the Pure Sun sect. In the undead world, among the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms, the undead world had the most souls. Due to the fact that it was not particularly dangerous, many powerhouses from the Devata realms would come here to capture souls and turn them into weapon spirits for their prominent celestial weapons. For this reason, powerhouses from the Devata realms were often attracted to the undead world. Naturally, many powerhouses from the Devata realms were unlucky enough to encounter the powerhouses from the undead world, and were trapped in the undead world forever. After all, the undead world was one of the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms. Although the undead world was not as dangerous as the Azura Hell, it was still filled with unknown dangers. At this moment, in the depths of the undead world, where powerhouses from the Devata realms did not dare to enter, there was a series of bloody mountains that were connected in a complicated manner. When looked at from afar in the sky, this expanse of Blood Mountain was like a mountain range that had been casually created by the Creator. There was no pattern to it, and it was randomly distributed everywhere. However, there was a large group of people gathered in this place. They were the rare beings in the undead world who possess fleshly bodies. Most of these beings were similar to humans. However, their skin color, body shape, and some of their features were slightly different. Some of them even resembled the aliens in the Earthlings' fantasies. In the belly of a relatively large blood mountain, in a huge cave, a magnificent palace was crouching there like a giant beast. At this moment, in a quiet room in the palace, a handsome young man was sitting cross-legged. He was muttering to himself in a strange tone. He muttered to himself, "Feng Qingyang, you should know that if this continues, it won't do you any good to me." Chapter 3958. As soon as the handsome young man finished muttering to himself, his expression changed. It was no longer sinister. Instead, his expression became more natural. However, as his expression returned to normal, the handsome young man suddenly let out a cold snort. Then let's continue to waste time. As soon as Feng Qingyang finished speaking, a sinister expression appeared on his face. Feng Qingyang, I know what you're thinking. Do you think I didn't notice your soul is still growing stronger? You're thinking of breaking free from me after you've broken through to the Divine Emperor stage, right? As soon as he finished speaking, he chuckled. If that's what you think, then you're really too naive. Do you think you'll be able to break through and become a Divine Emperor? I'm sure you've sensed it in the past 2 months. Your soul that's close to breaking through to the Divine Emperor stage can no longer grow stronger, right? Perhaps you think your soul has reached a bottleneck, but is that really the case? The handsome young man's originally evil face now had a sinister smile. No matter how one looked at it, it didn't match his handsome face at all. It gave people a feeling that it was a waste for such a soul to stay in such a good body. You're the one who did this? The handsome young man asked in a low voice after his expression returned to normal. At this moment, the two people talking to each other were none other than Feng Qingyang and Mi Xian, the dead spirit clansman who had taken over Feng Qingyang's body, but did not fully control it. Previously, Mi Xian had entered Feng Qingyang's body in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Although he could have killed Feng Qingyang by paying a certain price, he did not do so. This was because he was interested in the fortuitous encounter Feng Qingyang had in the Azura Hell. Mi Xian was certain there was something good in the Azura Hell. Moreover, Feng Qingyang was able to come out of the Azura Hell unscathed every time. This meant he had a way to survive in the Azura Hell. Mi Xian was very curious about Feng Qingyang's secret. Of course, he wanted to know if Feng Qingyang's secret would be of any help to him. In other words, he wanted to see if he could seize this fortune of Feng Qingyang's. A low divine king had become a high divine king in just a few decades. Moreover, he was very close to becoming a divine emperor. Naturally, he wouldn't believe that there wasn't a huge secret behind this. Not bad. Mi Xian indifferently said. 2 months ago, I had someone set up a soul sealing array to envelop the area we are currently in. You should know that this is the netherworld. What exists here are mainly spiritual life forms. Looking at the entire world, I'm afraid there's no place that understands the soul better than the life forms here. You Feng Qingyang, want to play with souls in front of me, Mi Xian? You're still too young. Don't forget that I'm not just a member of the dead spirit race, but also the former patriarch of the dead spirit race. Mi Xian's face was filled with disdain and mockery as he spoke. This time, Feng Qingyang didn't respond to Mi Xian. However, Mi Xian clearly didn't intend to give up so easily. Feng Qingyang, I'll give you 1 more year. If you still don't cooperate after a year, don't blame me for being merciless. After I kill you, I'll take control of your body, disguise myself as you, and kill all of your subordinates. Even your disciple, Duan Lingtian, may not be able to see through my disguise. Who knows, I might even be able to kill him. Don't doubt it. I've become very familiar with your soul in this period of time. I can imitate the aura of your soul. Almost as soon as Mi Xian finished speaking, his originally eerie face suddenly became calm and gentle. His eyes also became incomparably calm. In the blink of an eye, his aura underwent an earth-shattering change. How is it? Does it look like me? With a faint smile on his face, Mi Xian's voice was sharp at the beginning, but the latter half of his words completely transformed into Feng Qingyang's voice. Mi Xian, if I fight you to the death now, even if you don't die, you'll definitely be crippled. Inside his body, Feng Qingyang's soul emitted waves of cold aura. If this was when I had just returned to the netherworld, perhaps. But now, if you really want to die, I'll only be lightly injured at most. Half a year ago, my subordinates gave me this thing in the spatial ring. Mi Xian's eyes narrowed. In the next moment, a faint halo appeared around his soul. At first glance, it looked like a shield. The shield was light gold and surrounded by a halo of light. There were talismans, characters, and many complicated diagrams mixed together and constantly rotating. A soul defensive divine artifact. Feng Qingyang's voice sounding somewhat unwilling and cold. Not bad. At least you have some knowledge. Mi Xian sneered. Feng Qingyang, remember, I'll only give you 1 year. Think about it carefully for the next year. Don't make a mistake. Otherwise, you won't just be making a mistake for yourself, your subordinates, and even your disciple, Duan Lingtian. Naturally, Duan Lingtian was unaware of everything that had happened in the netherworld. Currently, Duan Lingtian was still cultivating in the Chunyang school in Tunglung province in the Xiangang land. Of course, this was his true body. As for his spatial law clone, he had once again used the space-piercing divine shuttle to cross the void in space and arrive at a lower plane. This time he appeared in a mundane plane. In this world, the number of mundane planes exceeded the imagination of ordinary people. They could be described as endless. This time, Duan Lingtian arrived in a mundane plane that was completely unfamiliar to him. However, it was very similar to a mundane plane he had come into contact with before. Yanhuang Plain. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. In the boundless starry sky, Duan Lingtian stepped out of a spatial rift that appeared out of thin air. At the same time, cannonballs whistled in the air as they crossed the starry sky and arrived at the other end. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes and saw a huge body that resembled an astral behemoth hovering in the starry sky not far away. This body was somewhat similar to some of the unpopular warships that Duan Lingtian had encountered in Yanhuang Plain, but it was more terrifying. Boom. Rumble. When the cannonballs landed on the planet in front of him, the entire planet shook violently. Smoke and dust rose into the air. At first, Duan Lingtian frowned slightly. In the next instant, he extended his divine consciousness and discovered that there was almost no life on the planet. The reason he said almost no life was because there was only one person on the planet. That person was constantly dodging the cannonballs that were locked onto him. One person attracted a warship. Duan Lingtian shook his head lightly. He did not intend to meddle in this matter. He narrowed his eyes and extended his divine consciousness to search for the weak point in the spatial barrier between the mundane realm and the Devata realm. As long as he could find the weak point, he would be able to break through the barrier and enter the mundane realm. Just as Duan Lingtian was scanning the area with his divine consciousness, a signal that resembled an ultrasonic wave swept across the starry sky and landed on Duan Lingtian. In the next instant, a commotion broke out in the warship. Reporting. There's an unidentified human in front. Reporting. The other party traveled through the starry sky with his physical body. It's obvious he's a super powerhouse as well. Could he be a helper of that person? Reporting. Should we attack him? Soon after, a tall figure appeared in the cockpit of the warship. It was a middle-aged man with a cold expression. His short, dark red hair was spiky, and he looked extremely resolute. Turn on the loudspeaker. I want to talk to him. As soon as the middle-aged man finished speaking, he turned on the warship's loudspeaker. Then he said, "The purple-clad man in front, if you're not a helper of our target, please retreat 10 miles away. Otherwise, we'll treat you as a helper of that person and kill you as well." Duan Lingtian heard the middle-aged man's words. However, he was not bothered by it. He had no intention of leaving since he was still searching for the weak point in the spatial barrier between the mundane realm and the Devata realm. Soon after, the commander of the battleship saw Duan Lingtian's indifference and finally fired a few cannonballs at him. The cannonballs were like meteors as they locked onto Duan Lingtian. Boom. Rumble. However, when the cannonballs exploded and the dust settled, a shocking scene unfolded before everyone's eyes. The purple-clad young man stood there unscathed. Not even a crease could be seen on his robe. As for the explosive force of the cannonballs, they were blocked by the spatial storm in front of him. It was like a spatial wall that blocked all the attacks from the warship. For a moment, silence filled the cockpit of the warship. More than a dozen people looked at the monster-like figure outside the cabin's mirror. Some of them sucked in a breath of cold air, and some of them swallowed hard. "Sir Commander, should we launch another attack?" One of the people controlling the warship asked in a low voice. Smack. In the next moment, the middle-aged man slapped him on the head. "I'll kill anyone who dares to act rashly." At the same time, the middle-aged man said through the loudspeaker, "Sir, we've misunderstood you. We're willing to compensate you. Please." However, before he could finish speaking, he saw the purple-clad figure had vanished into thin air like a ghost. The people in the cockpit were stunned. Where did he go? Is he a human or a ghost? Duan Lingtian, naturally, would not bother with the people from the mundane realms. Even if the attacks landed on him, they would not be able to harm him at all. However, his robe would be affected since it was a real robe, and not one formed from divine energy. Compared to a robe formed from divine energy, Duan Lingtian preferred to wear a real robe. It was made of cotton and was very comfortable. Chapter 3959. Naturally, the Duan Lingtian who had come to the mundane realm was only a law clone. However, before the law clone left, Duan Lingtian had dressed it in a real robe with just a thought. Naturally, the robe could not be connected to the body of his law clone. However, since his law clone was destined to stay in the lower realms, there was no need for him to worry about that. I finally found it. Duan Lingtian extended his divine consciousness for a while before he finally found the weak point in the spatial barrier between the mundane realm and the Devata realm. Then, he broke through the barrier and traveled to the nearby Devata realm. Duan Lingtian had been to this Devata realm in the past. Back then, he had traveled to almost all the Devata realms in search of his family. He had only missed a few Devata realms. Another small place? Duan Lingtian felt helpless when he discovered his law clone had returned to a remote place in the Devata realm. There was no transportation formation in this remote place at all. It seems like it'll take some time before I can reach the transportation formation in the Devata realm. Duan Lingtian sighed helplessly as he made his way to a more prosperous place with a transportation formation in the Devata realm. While Duan Lingtian was searching for a Devata realm transportation formation to head to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven, a voice suddenly rang out. However, someone had arrived at the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven ahead of him. Compared to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven that had been reduced to rubble, the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven had been refurbished. Whether it was the landmark buildings or the entrance, everything had been restored. This was done under the supervision of the elders of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Swoosh! Outside the entrance of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven, two elders of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven, who were guarding the entrance, suddenly saw a figure in front of them. It was a young man dressed in a long golden robe. The young man had sharp eyebrows and was as handsome as jade. He had a graceful bearing. He looked in the direction of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. After a while he muttered to himself, "It seems like Duan Lingtian hasn't arrived yet. In that case, I'll wait for him here." The young man sat cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes to meditate. Upon seeing this, the two elders who were guarding the entrance of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven frowned. "Who's that? Why is he meditating outside the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven? What's he doing here? Is he looking for someone? Is he waiting for someone? I don't know, let's wait and see." The heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven did not to interfere with the young man Lingtian's. Was perhaps he was looking for someone. However, as time passed, more than an hour had passed, and they saw that no one had come out to meet the golden-robed young man. They immediately felt even more strange. He is not looking to look for someone to search heavenly to Meto Lingtian to Meto the heavens to be heavens to's heavenly heavens is the heave? He heaven be to waits. A moment later, one of the elders on duty flew out, and was about to approach the golden-robed young man to warn him to leave. However, the moment he moved, the golden-robed young man suddenly opened his eyes. With just an indifferent glance, he caused the elder on duty to instantly stop. At the same time, he felt his entire body being pressured by an invisible force, causing him to almost suffocate. At the same time, he discovered that the celestial origin energy in his body had been completely suppressed. He could not use it at all. It was even to the extent that the reason he was able to remain in midair was all thanks to the invisible energy that had been extended by his opponent. Otherwise, he who couldn't utilize his celestial origin energy would have fallen from the sky a long time ago. Lord Mengluo, I've been attacked outside the mountain gate. Help! The elder who was on duty immediately sent a message to the strongest person in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. The heavenly savage celestial emperor, Mengluo. He was one of Mengluo's admirers. Previously, he had rushed to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven, after hearing that Mengluo was personally taking charge of the recruitment. At this moment, the other elder on duty in front of the mountain gate also discovered that something was amiss. What's going on? This guy, why is he frozen in the void? In just a blink of an eye, a figure with a majestic aura shot out of the mountain gate like a cannonball, and appeared outside the mountain gate in just a blink of an eye. When the elder on duty saw this person, his eyes lit up immediately. Then, he hurriedly bowed respectfully at the newcomer. Greetings, Lord Mengluo. The newcomer was none other than Mengluo. Mengluo stood outside the mountain gate and looked at the young man who was sitting cross-legged in the distance. In the beginning, he only frowned slightly. However, his expression soon turned solemn. The young man's surroundings seemed to have turned into a forbidden zone. His divine consciousness could not get close to the young man at all. Sir, who are you? Why have you come to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven? Mengluo asked politely. Although he did not know if the young man was using the formation disc, or if the young man was using the formation, he still asked politely. At the same time, the young man raised his hand and tossed the elder on duty in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven to Mengluo, like a piece of trash. When the elder on duty discovered he could control his celestial origin energy, he hastily bowed at Mengluo and said, Lord Mengluo, I'm sorry for troubling you. Mengluo nodded slightly at the elder. You may leave for now. After the person in front of him left, Mengluo once again looked at the golden figure not far away. He felt slightly uneasy. At the same time, he could not help but feel a sense of bitterness in his heart. Initially, he thought he was quite strong, and that there were not many people who were stronger than him in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. However, he did not expect a powerhouse whom even the heavenly emperor, whom he respected the most, could not do anything to would appear. Then, the young master of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven showed up, and displayed strength that was even stronger than the heavenly emperor. After all, the young master of the solitary destructive heaven was not as strong as him in the past. In less than 100 years, the young master of the solitary destructive heaven had grown so strong that he could kill him with just a sneeze. Now that the golden-clad young man had appeared out of nowhere, not only was he unable to see through the young man, but he also felt an inexplicable pressure. He was certain the young man was not pressuring him. However, he still felt an inexplicable pressure when facing the young man. He did not know if it was just his mind playing tricks on him. I mean you no harm. The golden-clad young man remained seated with his legs crossed. His expression remained unchanged as he looked at Mengluo indifferently and said lazily, I'm here to wait for someone. That person will leave when he arrives. The young man replied. Are you waiting for someone from the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven? Mengluo asked. He thought the young man was here to look for the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. He was already wondering how he should answer if the young man asked about the heavenly emperor's whereabouts. I don't know. The golden-clad young man shook his head. A slight frown appeared on Mengluo's face when the young man spoke again. His name is Duan Lingtian. Do you know him? Duan Lingtian. Mengluo was stunned when he heard the young man's words. Then he sighed in relief. A smile appeared on his face as he said, So you're a friend of the young master of the solitary destructive heaven? Did you arrange to meet the young master of the solitary destructive heaven here? It was as though Mengluo had changed into a different person. He was much friendlier now. Upon seeing this, the elder from the heavenly palace who worshipped Mengluo was shocked. He did not expect the usually cold heavenly savage celestial emperor to have such a side to him. Duan Lingtian is the young master of the solitary destructive heaven? The golden-clad young man was slightly taken aback when he heard this. He rose to his feet and shook his head as he said, That brat didn't tell me this. If I knew he's the young master of the solitary destructive heaven, I would have gone in and asked for a cup of tea instead of waiting here. However, no matter how slow he is, he should have arrived by now. As soon as the golden-clad young man finished speaking, swoosh, a figure appeared in the distance with just a few teleportations. He's here. The golden-clad young man smiled faintly as he looked in the direction of the figure. In just a blink of an eye, Duan Lingtian appeared outside the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven as well. Greetings, young master of the solitary destructive heaven. Meng Luo bowed respectfully when he saw Duan Lingtian. Even the two elders from the heavenly palace who were on duty at the entrance of the solitary destructive heaven quickly followed suit, and bowed as well. Greetings, young master of the solitary destructive heaven. Senior Meng Luo, you're here as well. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised to see Meng Luo. I heard there's a guest, so I came out to welcome him. Meng Luo said awkwardly as he looked at the golden-clad young man. Earlier he had come in a hurry. If he did not know the golden-clad young man was not to be trifled with, he would have attacked him. At this moment, Duan Lingtian looked at the golden-clad young man and smiled apologetically. Elder Yi, I appeared in a mundane realm. After I arrived in the Devata realm, I arrived at a small place that's quite far from the transportation formation. I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. Meng Luo was confused by Duan Lingtian's polite words. It seemed like the golden-clad young man was even more extraordinary than the young master of the solitary destructive heaven. After all, the young master of the solitary destructive heaven was a divine emperor. Who was this golden-clad young man whom he addressed as Elder Yi? It's all right, I've only waited for a short while. The golden-clad young man was none other than Yi Chenfeng, a Void Peer stage elder from the Pure Sun sect who had returned with Duan Lingtian from the Mystic Star Land. He smiled indifferently as he said, However, you didn't tell me you're the young master of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. As the host, shouldn't you brew a pot of tea for a guest who has come from afar? Yi Chenfeng said with a smile. Chapter 3960. Meng Luo was stunned when he entered the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven with the two figures in front of him. His heart was filled with shock and awe. Earlier, his young hall master had introduced him to the golden-robed young man, and he had also introduced the golden-robed young man to him. The golden-clad young man was a Void Peer stage elder from the Chunyang school. He had no idea who the golden-clad young man was. However, he instinctively assumed the golden-clad young man was from a hidden force in a Devata realm. Moreover, he was certain the golden-clad young man had a high status. However, when his young palace master, Duan Lingtian, told him through voice transmission what kind of force the Pure Sun sect was and what the other party's cultivation base was, he was shocked. The Chunyang school was a god-emperor force in a realm of gods with many god-emperors. Moreover, the golden-clad young man was a god-emperor? Although Meng Luo had never been to a realm of gods, he had heard about the god-emperors from his heavenly emperor, Feng Qingyang. Even in a realm of gods, god-emperors were considered top-notch powerhouses. Naturally, celestial emperors from the natives of the realms of gods would have their strength restricted in the lower realms of the realms of gods. For example, the person who had hunted his heavenly emperor down in the realm of gods had said that he could kill his heavenly emperor with just a breath if his strength was not restricted. However, even if his strength was restricted, his heavenly emperor was still no match for him. In the end, his heavenly emperor was forced to enter the Azura Hell, one of the 7 deadliest places in a Devata realm. Initially, Meng Luo had thought his heavenly emperor was doomed. He did not expect his heavenly emperor would return in the end. However, it did not affect his understanding of how terrifying the experts in the realm of gods were. If their strength was restricted, how terrifying would they be if their strength was not restricted? According to the young palace master, this Elder Yi isn't a native of the realms of gods. In other words, his strength as a god emperor won't be restricted when he leaves the realms of gods, Duan Lingtian said. This is an existence much stronger than the young palace master. Right now, Meng Luo was completely frightened by Yi Chenfeng's strength, and was somewhat distracted. Duan Lingtian brought Yi Chunfeng to the place where he used to cultivate in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. When the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven was in ruins and had to be rebuilt, Hua Lao had personally overseen the restoration of the place. Young Palace Master. Duan Lingtian and Hua Lao chatted in the courtyard while Meng Luo stood guard outside. Not long after, Hua Lao appeared, wearing a fiery red robe. Hua Lao, of course, it was Meng Luo who greeted him. As for the others, he didn't call them over. Even if the higher-ups of the Heavenly Emperor Palace noticed Duan Lingtian's return, they were dismissed by him. He didn't want them to disturb the young palace master and the divine emperor. Hua Lao. Duan Lingtian rose to his feet when he saw Hua Lao. With a smile on his face, he introduced Hua Lao to Yi Chunfeng. Duan Lingtian had always treated Hua Lao as a senior, even if Yi Chunfeng addressed himself as a servant. Duan Lingtian had never treated him as such. Back in the mundane realm, Hua Lao and the Seven Treasures Jewel Pagoda had saved his life countless times. Duan Lingtian had survived countless dangers with the help of the Seven Treasures Jewel Pagoda and Hua Lao. Hua Lao, Senior Meng Luo, please carry on with your work. Elder Yi and I will stay here for a while before we leave. Duan Lingtian said to Elder Hua and Meng Luo. Also, the reason Elder Yi followed me here is to enter the netherworld and rescue Master. I'm sure it won't be long before you can see Master again. Upon seeing Meng Luo, Duan Lingtian was relieved to know that his master, Feng Qingyang, was still alive. It was fine as long as he was alive. His mere clone might not be able to do anything to Mi Xian. However, Yi Chunfeng, who had followed him back from the profound Handle Land, was his original body and a god emperor. How strong was a god emperor's soul power? At least, Duan Lingtian knew that his original body's soul power was not even 1/100th of Yi Chunfeng's soul power. The safety of Feng Qingyang, the Lord Heavenly Emperor, was undoubtedly a worry for Meng Luo and Hua Lao. When they found out that Yi Chunfeng was a god emperor, they wondered if he was a helper that their young palace master had found to go to the netherworld to rescue their Lord Heavenly Emperor. Now that their young palace master had confirmed it, they were overjoyed. Before leaving, they all bowed and expressed their gratitude to Yi Chunfeng. After the two left, Yi Chunfeng looked at Duan Lingtian and said with a smile, "The two of them are loyal to your master." Duan Lingtian nodded. Senior Meng Luo has been with Master since a long time ago. He's a loyal follower. As for Elder Hua, although he hasn't been with Master for a long time, it was Master who gave him a new life. Therefore, he also sees Master as his savior. He feels that serving Master is the same as repaying the favor. Duan Lingtian said. Both are rare. Yi Chunfeng nodded. When do we leave? Anytime. Duan Lingtian said. However, I'm not familiar with the netherworld and don't know how to get there. I have to do some homework first. You don't have to do any homework. Yi Chunfeng smiled. I've been to the netherworld once before I became a god. I know how to get there. Now what you have to do is to see if you can find out where your master is in the netherworld. Or rather, how to find that dead spirit clansman in the netherworld. The netherworld is not small. Going there to find someone is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Yi Chunfeng shook his head as he spoke. Duan Lingtian frowned slightly. Then we can only try and see if we can find any clues about where he is in the netherworld. At this moment, Duan Lingtian suddenly regretted killing Wu Hongqing, the palace master of the main hall of the Tidal Temple. Since Wu Hongqing was able to ask Mi Xian to deal with his master after his master, Feng Qingyang, returned, it meant that Wu Hongqing might know where Mi Xian was in the netherworld. Of course, it was also possible that Wu Hongqing didn't know and was only communicating through soul orbs. Elder Yi, please stay here for a while. I'll go and ask around. After bidding farewell to Yi Chunfeng, Duan Lingtian left the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Then he teleported to the Tidal Temple's branch in the solitary destructive heaven, through a nearby transportation formation. The current hall master of the solitary destructive heavens branch was a new hall master. Moreover, he was a close confidant of Zhuang Tianheng, the current hall master of the Tidal Temple. Zhuang Tianheng had appointed Duan Lingtian, as the Hall Master of the solitary destructive heavens branch, because he was worried that someone would offend Duan Lingtian. Therefore, Zhuang Tianheng could order his close confidants to treat Duan Lingtian with respect. After all, Zhuang Tianheng had the support of Duan Lingtian. Moreover, Duan Lingtian had killed Wu Hongqing and made Zhuang Tianheng the Hall Master of the main temple. Young Master. At this time, Duan Lingtian was led by the Hall Master of the solitary destructive heavens branch of the Tidal Temple to the Tidal Temple's main temple through a transportation formation. Zhuang Tianheng had long since familiarized himself with his new identity. His attitude was much more dignified than before. However, when he saw Duan Lingtian, he bowed humbly and asked, "My lord, is there anything I can help you with?" Duan Lingtian did not beat around the bush as he asked, "Is there anyone in the Tidal Temple who was close to Wu Hongqing in the past?" Although Zhuang Tianheng did not know why Duan Lingtian asked such a question, he smiled wryly and said, "That's all. Those who were close to Wu Hongqing were all killed by you, Lord. I've also killed the rest." "My lord, do you need them for something?" Zhuang Tianheng asked. "I don't really need them." Although Duan Lingtian was slightly disappointed, he did not show it on his face. After obtaining a large number of cultivation resources from Zhuang Tianheng, he decided to leave. Previously, before he parted ways with Zhuang Tianheng, he had instructed Zhuang Tianheng to continue collecting cultivation resources that were useful to his family. After so many years, he had accumulated quite a number of cultivation resources. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to contact Elder Hua of the Heavenly Palace of the Solitary Destructive Heaven. I've already exchanged soul pearls with both of you. If there's anything I can do for you, I can help you," Duan Lingtian said to Zhuang Tianheng before he left. Although Duan Lingtian knew Zhuang Tianheng would not dare to disobey him, he felt it was better to give Zhuang Tianheng some benefits if he wanted Zhuang Tianheng to work for him. "Yes, my lord." As expected, when Zhuang Tianheng heard Duan Lingtian's words, he nodded respectfully with a smile on his face. Then he watched as Duan Lingtian left. "Safe journey, my lord." After leaving the Tidal Temple, Duan Lingtian returned to the Heavenly Palace of the Solitary Destructive Heaven. After meeting up with Yi Chenfeng, he said, "Elder Yi, I'm afraid we've run out of leads. However, I have an idea that might work." Duan Lingtian said to Yi Chenfeng. "What is it?" Yi Chenfeng asked curiously. "Luring the snake out of its hole." Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed with a bright light as he said bluntly, "Next, I'll have to trouble Elder Yi to bring me to the Netherworld. I want to send a message there." "All right." At this moment, Yi Chenfeng knew he could only rely on Duan Lingtian to capture the Nether Spirit Clansmen. If he relied on himself, he would be able to find the Nether Spirit Clansmen after spending some time. However, the process of finding the Nether Spirit Clansmen was like searching for a needle in a haystack to him. If he had a choice, he would not want to search for the dead Spirit Clansmen in the Netherworld. Moreover, who knew if the Nether Spirit Clansmen would kill Duan Lingtian's master? While he was searching for Duan Lingtian's master, then he would switch to another body and continue to live on. If the dead Spirit Clansman concealed his identity, it would be a waste of time. Chapter 3961. The Netherworld also existed in an independent dimension. The way to go there was similar to going to the Azura Hell. Back then, it was Duan Lingtian's master, Feng Qingyang, who had brought him to the Azura Hell. Today, it was Yi Chenfeng who had brought him to the Netherworld. After entering the Netherworld, Duan Lingtian finally understood why it was said that the Netherworld was not that dangerous. The moment they entered the Netherworld, it was peaceful, no different from the outside world. Although they could occasionally see some spiritual life forms, these spiritual life forms were obviously very timid. When they saw Duan Lingtian and Yi Chenfeng from afar, they all avoided them. "I didn't expect the Netherworld to be so peaceful." Duan Lingtian sighed. "The periphery is like this." Yi Chenfeng smiled. "When you enter the Netherworld, you will be in the periphery. Moreover, at different times after entering the Netherworld, you will appear in different places in the periphery. Unless you enter at the same time, like you and me." Back then, before Yi Chenfeng had become a god, He had entered the netherworld to capture spiritual life forms that could serve as the weapon spirits of high-grade divine weapons for his family. After so many years coming here again, he was rather emotional. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. At the same time, he finished what he had to do next in a short time. After that, Duan Lingtian said to Yi Chenfeng, "Senior, I'm not sure if my plan will work. I feel that we can wander around the netherworld for a while and gather some information." Yes. Yi Chenfeng had no objections. Although he was looking forward to this trip, he knew there was no such thing as absolute certainty. Even if Duan Lingtian could bring him to the Nether Spirit Clan's clansmen, who knew if the Nether Spirit Clan's clansmen would be killed first? Nothing was absolute. Therefore, although he was looking forward to it, he still maintained a calm heart. For the rest of the trip, Duan Lingtian began to ask around for the old site of the Dead Spirit Clan. After a few days, he successfully found the old site of the Dead Spirit Clan. The former encampment of the Dead Spirit Clan had long been reduced to ruins. Not even a blade of grass grew. Furthermore, as a race of spiritual life forms, there were no exquisite buildings to begin with. Even if they were standing on top of the ruins, they could imagine that even if they weren't in ruins, they wouldn't be much better. "Duan Lingtian, I have an idea," Yi Chenfeng suddenly said. Duan Lingtian looked at Yi Chenfeng in confusion. "I feel that instead of searching for clues here, why don't we find the powerful races nearby and ask them if they have any clues about the Dead Spirit Race clansmen? The birth of a godly emperor realm Dead Spirit clansman. As long as he doesn't intend to hide from the world, the other clans will have some news about him." Yi Chenfeng expressed his thoughts. Duan Lingtian's eyes immediately lit up at Yi Chenfeng's thought. At the same time, he smiled bitterly. "I forgot. With Elder Yi, a God Emperor powerhouse, there's no need to worry about those clans in the netherworld not giving you face. A God Emperor expert, and a medium God Emperor at that. Most importantly, he had come in person. Even if such an existence was not considered the strongest in the netherworld, it would definitely be considered as one of the more top-notch powerhouses. Not to mention others, just the Dead Spirit race. In the past, if Yi Chenfeng had come to the Dead Spirit race, he could have easily wiped them out by himself. Even those clans whose strongest experts were only godly emperors would find it difficult to stop Yi Chenfeng. "You've been thinking of your own methods. It's normal that you've neglected me." Yi Chenfeng smiled slightly. "Anyway, your method of luring the snake out of its hole is scheduled for many days later. During this time, let's try my method. Who knows, we might be able to find that person. Unless that person can keep his composure, he'll definitely leave behind some clues. In an ordinary place in the netherworld, the appearance of a godly emperor is no small matter." Yi Chenfeng actually knew more about the netherworld than Duan Lingtian. Hearing Yi Chenfeng's words, Duan Lingtian naturally had no objections. "Then we'll follow Elder Ye's method first. If we really can't find that Mixian, we'll go out and wait for him to walk right into our trap." The Silverhorn clan was one of the few clans in the netherworld that did not have souls. Moreover, this clan was not much different from humans. However, they were more like the primitive people on Earth. They were between apes and humans and looked somewhat uncivilized. In fact, their intelligence was no different from that of humans. In fact, because they spent most of their time in the netherworld and lived in the environment of the netherworld, their souls were stronger than those of humans of the same cultivation level. Most importantly, there was a special feature. This race also had a very obvious characteristic. They all had a single silver horn on their heads. The horn was extremely sharp and could be considered one of their weapons. If it was tempered to a high-grade immortal artifact, it was even stronger. This is the Silverhorn clan. It's said that they're a close relative of humans. They're the offspring of humans and immortal beasts. At this moment, Yi Chenfeng brought Duan Lingtian to the place where the Silverhorn clan resided. Within a huge valley among the lofty mountains and precipitous ridges, Yi Chenfeng stood in the air and looked down at everything as he spoke to Duan Lingtian. The Silverhorn clan is scattered all over the netherworld. Most of them are branches. This Silverhorn clan should only be a branch. The strongest one is only a mid-level divine emperor, Yi Chenfeng said. At this moment, although Duan Lingtian and Yi Chunfeng were standing openly here, the Silverhorn clan members who were passing by did not seem to see them at all. This was of course Yi Chunfeng's method. Let's go. Let's go meet the strongest person of this branch of the Silverhorn clan. After calling out to Duan Lingtian, Yi Chunfeng led him out of the Silverhorn clan. In the blink of an eye, they had arrived at the depths of the Silverhorn clan's residence, and entered a building that looked like a temple. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed. In the next moment, he realized that Yi Chunfeng had brought him into a huge room. Although the room was huge, the furnishings inside were very simple. There was a table, a chair, and a bed. At this moment, a very old Silverhorn clan member was sitting on the bed. This Silverhorn clan member was very different from the Silverhorn clan members outside. He was more like a human. Moreover, there was only a little silver horn left on his forehead. It seemed like it would disappear completely at any time. In the Silverhorn clan, the stronger the existence, the more they'll be like a human. When they reach the Emperor God realm, the silver horn on their forehead will disappear completely. At the same time, they'll look no different from a human. Yi Chunfeng said to Duan Lingtian in a timely manner. Duan Lingtian nodded his head. All right, now that we've revealed ourselves, he should be awake by now. As soon as Yi Chunfeng finished his sentence, the concealment technique that was covering him and Duan Lingtian was instantly removed. Both of them were completely exposed. As soon as they were exposed, the Silverhorn clansmen on the bed sensed their auras. Horror dawned on him as soon as he opened his eyes. When he saw Duan Lingtian and Yu Luo, his divine energy surged out of his body. In the next moment, he was extremely agitated. It was as though he was about to attack. However, as Yi Chunfeng snorted coldly, a strong invisible energy swept out. In the blink of an eye, it crushed the divine energy on the Silverhorn clan member, and suppressed his divine energy completely. In the next moment, the Silverhorn clan member's expression changed drastically. His eyes were filled with fear. At the same time, an old and terrified voice came from the depths of his throat. Emperor. Emperor God. Emperor God expert. You're quite observant, Yi Chunfeng said indifferently. At the same time, he withdrew his energy. It was as though he was no longer worried that the Silverhorn clan member before him would act rashly. As for the other party, he did not act rashly. To be precise, he did not dare to act rashly. The Silverhorn clan member took a deep breath. In the next moment, he got off the bed and bowed respectfully to Yi Chunfeng. Greetings, Master Emperor God. Yi Chunfeng nodded lightly. I have no ill intentions towards you or your Silverhorn clan. I'm here mainly to ask for your help. I want to see if you can help me find someone. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Chunfeng raised his hand. A pill bottle appeared in his hand. In the blink of an eye, the divine pill in the pill bottle whizzed out and floated in mid-air. It was a divine pill that was surrounded by purple lightning. It emitted an alluring pill fragrance. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian recognized the divine pill with just a glance. It was a divine pill that would not increase his cultivation level if he were to consume it now. Moreover, the one in Yi Chunfeng's hand was an ultimate divine pill. It was an ultimate emperor-level divine pill. This is. As for Qi Lu, when he saw the divine pill, his pupil shrank rapidly. Even his breathing became hurried. Ultimate Purple Lightning Divine Pill? Purple Lightning Divine Pill was a divine pill that could help divine emperors cultivate. The higher the quality, the better the effect. An Ultimate Purple Lightning Divine Pill was 10 times more effective than an ordinary Purple Lightning Divine Pill. Most importantly, no matter if it was an Ultimate Purple Lightning Divine Pill or an Ultimate Purple Lightning Divine Pill, after consuming 3 or more, it would no longer have any effect. At that time, one would develop a resistance to the medicinal effect. Part of the reason Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was able to advance so quickly was because he had consumed 3 extreme-grade violet electricity divine pills. Yes, he had personally refined them himself. Find that person, and this divine pill will be yours, Yi Chunfeng said. As soon as Yi Chunfeng said this, Qi Lu's eyes turned red. Master, who are you looking for? Not only can I find him myself, but I can also ask the Silverhorn clan for help. I can even ask the subordinate clans of the Silver Horn clan to help. Qi Lu was the high priest of the Silver Horn clan. He was also the strongest expert of this Silver Horn clan branch. Even the patriarch of the Silver Horn clan was only his disciple. Mi Xian of the Dead Spirit clan. Yi Qinfeng said. Mi Xian. Hearing Yi Qinfeng's words, Qi Lu's pupil shrank. Then, a trace of disgust flashed in the depths of his eyes. Master, you're looking for Mi Xian? You and Mi Xian. Qi Lu looked at Yi Qinfeng with a somewhat doubtful gaze. Seems like you know him. Yi Qinfeng looked deeply at Qi Lu. Do you know where he is? Chapter 3962. I don't know him. Qi Lu shook his head and said. But I've heard of him. This person is very ruthless. He used to be the patriarch of the Dead Spirit clan. Like the previous patriarchs of the Dead Spirit clan, he kept a low profile until he left the Netherworld. He became a completely different person. After he was chased out of the Dead Spirit race, he returned to the clan a few times and devoured all the clansmen of the Dead Spirit race. During this period, the elders of the Dead Spirit race once went to invite the God Emperors who were on good terms with the ancestor of the Dead Spirit race, but when the God Emperors arrived, he ran away. Later, he entered the God Emperor realm and killed the God Emperors that the Dead Spirit clan had invited to deal with him. He even wiped out that clan. In our region, he has become a celebrity. It is said that he has now become a middle God Emperor. When Qi Lu mentioned Mi Xian, there was a hint of fear in his tone. Even though he was also a middle God Emperor, he was still wary of the ruthless, who rose quickly. If possible, he really did not want to provoke such an existence. Do you know where he is now? Yi Qinfeng asked bluntly. I do. While Duan Lingtian and Yi Qinfeng were staring at Qi Lu nodded. After Mi Xian entered the Middle God Emperor realm, he occupied a piece of land and became the king of it. He gathered many non-soul life forms like us from the Netherworld and created a force called the Xianling Alliance. He even recruited a group of subordinates. His subordinates are also people who have committed all kinds of crimes in our area. They all go to him to seek his protection. Medium-level divine emperors. In our area, high-level divine emperors and above don't come out. They can be considered as overlords. Qi Lu said. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up when he heard Qi Lu's words. He did not expect to find Mi Xian's whereabouts so easily. To think that he had come up with a plan to lure the snake out of its hole out of worry. Now it seemed that it would not be necessary. Yi Qinfeng's eyes flickered as he looked at Yi Lu and asked again. Where is the Xianling Alliance? Do you know? I'm not too sure. However, my disciple, the current clan chief of the Silverhorn clan, should know about it. As soon as Qi Lu finished speaking, he added, I just sent a message to ask him. He knows. My lord, why are you looking for Mi Xian? Qi Lu asked. He didn't know if the person in front of him was Mi Xian's friend or foe. Even though it seemed more likely that the person in front of him was an enemy, Qi Lu still felt some fear in his heart. What? Are you afraid that he'll take revenge on you? This time, Duan Lingtian looked at Qi Lu as if he could see through Qi Lu's thoughts at a glance. Qi Lu smiled awkwardly. Although I'm not afraid of him, I'm inferior to someone who doesn't have a bottom line in all aspects. Who knows if he'll break through and become a higher God Emperor, if given some more time. Duan Lingtian smiled. If you're worried that he'll take revenge on you, there's no need for that. As long as he's targeted by us, he'll definitely die. This time, as long as the Silverhorn clan helps us find him, I'll give the Silverhorn clan 10 Ultimate Spiritualism Divine Pills. The Ultimate Spiritualism Divine Pill was an Ultimate King Grade Divine Pill. It was also a divine pill that assisted God Emperors in their cultivation. Although in terms of value, it was inferior to the Extreme Purple Electricity Divine Pill, which was an Extreme Emperor Grade Divine Pill. The 10 of them added together were still more valuable than the Extreme Purple Electricity Divine Pill. Moreover, the Ultimate Spiritualism Divine Pill's medicinal properties were relatively mild. Basically, one would only develop resistance after taking 5 pills. In this aspect, it was still stronger than the ultimate purple electricity divine pill. Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Yi Qinfeng glanced at Duan Lingtian. He had long heard that Duan Lingtian could refine ultimate king-grade divine pills. Now it seemed that the rumor was true. A lower god emperor who can kill ordinary god emperors, less than 3,000 years old, and can refine ultimate king-grade divine pills. Even those powerful hierarch forces might not have such a monstrous genius, right? If someone as young as Duan Lingtian had such a force, Yi Qinfeng would believe that some hierarch forces would have such a force. However, on this basis, coupled with the fact that he could refine ultimate king-grade divine pills, Yi Qinfeng felt that it was unlikely that any hierarch forces in the current era would have such an existence. Many thanks, my lord. Qi Lu's eyes lit up when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. Don't worry, my lord. I've already asked my disciple to come over. Once he's here, he and I will personally bring both of you to Mixian. As the saying went, money makes the world go round. In front of 10 ultimate king-grade divine pills, and 1 ultimate emperor-grade divine pill, Qi Lu completely dispelled any thoughts of hesitation and fear. Moreover, this lord who was traveling with a god emperor expert had said that as long as they found Mixian would undoubtedly die. If it was just a god emperor, or even a high-level god emperor, Qi Lu wouldn't dare to be 100% certain that they could kill Mixian. Mixian was too cunning. Even if a high-level god emperor was stronger than him, they might not be able to kill him. However, the person in front of him was different. A god emperor expert wanted to kill Mixian. So what if Mixian was cunning? With a single thought, Mixian would be suppressed. He had once been to the main clan of the Silver Horn clan, and witnessed the methods of the god emperors of the Silver Horn clan. That was only a lower god emperor, but he could kill a few high god emperors like killing dogs. The other party didn't even have a chance to escape. Teacher. Soon the patriarch of the Silver Horn clan arrived. He was a sturdy single-horned ape-man. The single horn on his head seemed to be retracting, and his eyes were bright and full of spirit. This is Lord God Emperor. With Qi Lu's introduction, the patriarch of the Silver Horn clan immediately bowed humbly at Yi Qinfeng. He did not even dare to look at Duan Lingtian as he bowed respectfully and called out, Lord! Now bring us to Profound Spirit Alliance and find that Mixian. Qi Lu looked at his disciple and said indifferently, Yes, teacher. Sirs, please come with me, Li Mu said. As the patriarch's voice fell, he led the way. Duan Lingtian and the other two immediately followed. With his disciple leading the way, Qi Lu naturally didn't dare to walk in front. He respectfully followed behind Duan Lingtian and Duan Lingtian. During this process, he was also observing Duan Lingtian. A person with a God Emperor expert was definitely not an ordinary person. Soon, he discovered that the other party was indeed extraordinary. Although he wasn't a God Emperor expert, he was still a God Emperor. Although he was only a lower God Emperor, he still gave him a sense of danger. Profound Spirit Alliance was located within a Blood Mountain range. Looking from afar, it gave off a sinister and strange feeling when contrasted with the gloomy sky of the Netherworld. Lords, this is the encampment of Profound Spirit Alliance. If we continue to go deeper, we might be discovered. That Mixian recruited an extremely famous array master in our area. Anyone below the God Emperor level who intrudes into his array will be discovered by him immediately. Mixian values him greatly and appointed him as the only Vice Alliance Master of Profound Spirit Alliance. His position is only below one person and above all others. Of course, Profound Spirit Alliance doesn't have that many people, at most a few hundred. The patriarch of the Silver Horn clan stood outside the Blood Mountain range and respectfully said to Duan Lingtian and Yi Qinfeng. Hearing this, Duan Lingtian looked at Yi Qinfeng. As for Yi Qinfeng, he had already extended his powerful consciousness the moment the other party finished speaking. In the blink of an eye, he had locked onto the entire Blood Mountain in front of him. Then, a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Elder Yi, you found it? Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. A high god king's body with two souls. It should be correct. Yi Qinfeng smiled. Duan Lingtian's face was immediately filled with joy, but after a while he became somewhat worried. Elder Yi, I haven't asked you how you plan to deal with that Mi Xian. If possible, I hope you won't harm my master's body and soul. This was also Duan Lingtian's only concern. You don't need to worry about this. Yi Chenfeng was clearly in a very good mood. If I, Yi Chenfeng, fail to deal with the soul of a mere middle god emperor, then I would have lived for almost 20,000 years in vain. The moment Yi Chenfeng's words left his mouth, Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. At the same time, he could not help but feel shocked. This elder Yi was less than 20,000 years old? Even in the Tianlong clan, it was difficult to find a golden dragon elder younger than 40,000 years old. Although he knew Yi Chenfeng was young, he didn't expect him to be this young. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was not the only one who was shocked. Even the two men from the Silverhorn clan were dumbfounded. This god emperor expert was less than 20,000 years old? One had to know that even the younger disciple, a lower-level divine emperor, was almost 30,000 years old. A god emperor expert less than 20,000 years old? Who is he? At this moment, the master and disciple of the Silverhorn clan saw the sincere shock in each other's eyes. At least in the netherworld, they had never heard of a god emperor expert less than 20,000 years old. Whoosh! Yi Chenfeng raised his hand, and a divine pill appeared. In the blink of an eye, it floated in front of the Silverhorn clan's high priest, allowing him to take it. Seeing this, Duan Lingtian also took out a bottle of pills and threw it to Qi Lu. After receiving the divine pill and the bottle, Qi Lu was overjoyed. He thanked Duan Lingtian and Duan Lingtian profusely. Thank you so much, thank you so much. However, when he bowed and stood up, he found that the two people in front of him had already disappeared. This time I've earned a lot. Qi Lu grinned and took out 5 divine pills from the bottle, together with the ultimate purple electricity divine pill. He threw them all to the disciple who had been staring at the divine pill in his hand for a long time. Out of the 10 ultimate spirit electricity divine pills, I'll give you 5. No matter how many I give you, it's useless. This ultimate purple electricity divine pill is also for you. The disciple shook his head hurriedly. Master, I can't take this ultimate purple electricity divine pill. With it, you'll definitely be able to pass the next heavenly tribulation smoothly. Take it as you're told. I know my situation best. Even if I take this ultimate purple electricity divine pill, I'll only live for 1 or 2,000 years at most. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.